Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast. And now your host, EYAL Levy.
Welcome to the URM Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. It's crazy to think that we're now on our 5th year, but it's true. And it's only because of you, the listeners. And if you'd like to see us stick around for another 5 years, there are a few simple things that you can do that would really help us out. And I would be endlessly appreciative. Number 1, share our episodes with your friends. If you get something out of these episodes, I'm sure they will too. So please share us with your friends. Number 2, post our episodes on your Facebook and Instagram and tag me and our guests too. My Instagram is at EYAL Audio. And let me just let you know that we love seeing ourselves tagged in these posts. Who knows, we might even respond. And number 3, leave us reviews and 5 stars, please, anywhere you can. We especially love iTunes reviews. Once again, I want to thank you all for the years and years of loyalty. I just want you to know that we will never, ever charge you for this podcast, and I will always work as hard as possible to improve the episodes in every single way possible. All I ask in return is a share, post, and a tag. Now let's get on with it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the URM Podcast. My guest today is Jimmy Alexander, who's a vocalist and producer from the Gold Coast region of Australia. His band, Awaken I Am, is signed to Victory Records, and I think he's best known for his production and songwriting for Slaves. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking. I introduce you, Jimmy Alexander. Jimmy Alexander, welcome to the URM Podcast.
Thank you very much, man. Honored to be here and chat to you.
Thanks. Well, how's life in Australia? It sounds to me like you're actually pretty busy right now, considering the situation.
Yeah, it's been interesting, man. Australia didn't get hit too bad by this coronavirus issue until very recently.
What changed?
The second wave came through and,
The drop bears got it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good old Melbourne started getting sick and it spread like wildfire. And then, of course, there's the few people that had to travel over the border to the different states and start spreading it. So my state's having a bit of a second wave now, and all the borders are closed again, so we lost a bit of work. All the interstate work has had to be cancelled, which is a shame. But life goes on, man. We do what we can.
And how's it affecting you?
Well, yeah, like I said, there's a few jobs that we've had to sort of postpone or cancel because they can't come here legally.
Okay, that's what you meant by interstate jobs.
Yeah, sorry. Bands that were travelling in from interstate, we had to cancel, which is a big bummer. But there's always plenty to do. You know how it is. You find some time and you can fill it pretty easy with stuff that you've got to catch up on. So
yeah, mixing and stuff like that, basically.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of an intense drum editing grind right now, so more time is a little bit welcomed, so it's going well.
Yeah. Have you done any remote production with anybody?
Yeah. So that's what I was going to go into. It's so the whole coronavirus period has been really busy for me just because of the capabilities of remote production, and it's been kind of interesting. A bit of a learning experience, sort of like sharing information with the people I'm working with on how to record themselves if they're recording themselves, or sending information to their engineer if they're going to an engineer, and writing back and forth. It's been time consuming and a bit of a challenge, but all in all, it's gone really smooth. I did a record with a group called Signals. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's Michael Jackson from A Skylit Drive. Yeah, his new venture. And we did that remotely where he tracked his vocals with an SM7B in his closet, I'm pretty sure, and it actually sounded okay. Got the job done. And then the guitarist in another state tracked guitars, and then we did fake guitars and fake drums, and I tracked bass. We sort of co-produced. It was really interesting. It took a really long time, but the record's done and it's coming out now, and that went well. I'm doing the same thing with Johnny Craig now.
What was interesting about it? Like, what was the challenge?
I think the creative stuff, just because it's so different. If someone's next to you and they're like, hey, I really want to try this, or you're like, I really want you to try this, it's so easy. But if they're on the other side of the world and it takes 3 days to get a back and forth going, and you'd be like, hey, man, I don't like the way you pronounce this one consonant. We need to get it a little bit better. And then 2 days later, they respond because it's the weekend for them. And before you know it, it takes a week to get one word retracked. So that, and then obviously pitching creative ideas as well. It was Yeah, the interesting thing was the time consumption.
How do you go about it? Like pitching a creative idea when you're not there to do it? Because I feel like the best way to pitch a creative idea is right then and there, play them the idea.
Absolutely. I've pretty much
let it speak for itself.
Yeah, I did that from afar. I'd just make it, if it was guitar or vocals, I'd do it with my own voice, play the guitar myself, or if it was programming, I'd obviously just do that myself, and then send it back and be like, hey guys, I think this is sick. Have a listen. Let me know what you think. And yeah, pretty much the same thing I'd do in person. Just takes a while to get a response. It would have been nice if they were just to my left or right and could say yes or no then and there. But exactly the same thing, yeah. Make the idea, pitch it to them, and generally they're like, this is sweet. And life keeps moving.
Do you feel like it's harder to get into the groove of a project?
Yes.
Like maintain a flow?
Yeah.
Because of that?
Absolutely, man. That aspect is hard. And just booking time is really difficult because, you know, you don't know how many times you're going to have to go back and forth on one part or one song or the whole record, and allowing time for that and not getting too busy with something else or putting too much time into this and letting your other work fall off to the side. That was the trickiest thing. And it did cost me in a few areas. Like a couple of jobs sort of fell off and I fell behind and had to be that dude that was being slow, which I pride myself on being punctual. So that was not awesome. That was probably the most challenging part.
The opposite of awesome.
Yeah, the opposite of awesome, man. It was so frustrating. And then bands would come and be like, hey, man, you know, we need all these changes and we're going to need them in 4 days. And I'd be stuck there.
Because we're going on tour.
Yeah, yeah, in coronavirus. And then I'd be stuck there like, sweet, dude, I have so much to do in the next 4 days. Like, I'm going to need this amount of time. And they're like, well, we have a dead. It was just, things got a little messy here and there. But for the most part, I tried to be as lenient as I could and just expected the same in return if people could just bear with me through a pandemic. And yeah, we got some really good things done. So happy outcome.
How are you approaching the time management aspect? Because it seems like the best idea is to stack multiple projects so that while you're waiting for response from one, you can work on another, and so on and so forth. But that can also backfire.
Exactly. The backfiring part is where it gets rough. So yeah, exactly what I'd do. I'd be working on multiple things. I'd arrange my week really nicely, and you know, Monday through to Friday, I'd work on all these things. Friday night, I send it all off, and I'm like, sweet, we're good to go. And then suddenly on Monday, them plus a few people get back to me, and I'm like, damn, this is not good. This is too much going on at once. And if I could just lay it all out, you know, consecutively, it would be really nice. And if everyone could get back to me in the perfect amount of time in an ideal world, that would be awesome too. But that's obviously wishful thinking and not going to happen.
Yeah. So how do you go about managing it?
Oh, it's a hard question to answer, isn't it? Just try my best, try not to suck, and try and do as much as I can in a short amount of time. But I think most of it comes from, it's funny, I've actually been going through this recently and trying to have a much more scheduled work life, which I'm sure you know is very hard when you're producing music for a living.
Very hard, period.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying now to just sort of lay out an expectation of what it's going to be like if someone sends me, you know, say it's revision notes on a song that we're working on creatively together. Because I think that's the hardest thing. Like mixing, you can sort of have a good understanding of how long something's going to take. And if you need to do revisions, it's not the most time-consuming thing. As opposed to if you've written a whole song for someone and they're like, hey, yeah, we like the first verse and we need to redo 2.5 minutes of a 3-minute song. That's when things can get hard. And I think it's just all about establishing a good back and forth, doing solid pre-production and preparation, and just, making sure the other person understands that if they get back to you on Monday saying they need this whole song restructured, you cannot do it on Tuesday, and that you'll work out a new time arrangement when those notes come. That's been my biggest sort of mission, which doesn't always work either, but it's better than, as you said, just letting things stack up and then everything comes back stacked up and then you're kind of screwed.
How do you approach pre-pro in general how is it different now versus normal?
Well, pre-pro now, I guess the biggest thing is I do most of it. I'm trying to think of a good example. But a group from Glasgow hit me up recently and we started talking about working together. And they have nothing to record. They don't even have like a laptop and a Focusrite, you know, those little 2i2 things. They don't even have that. They just had iPhones and a dude playing guitar and a girl singing. Super talented, they're sick. But they had nothing to record with. So I was like, well, we're going to need a demo, and then I can track everything for you, and then you can go and do vocals elsewhere and get them engineered locally to you. That's fine. But obviously we had no means to do pre-pro, so it pretty much just falls on me. And I'm like, damn, now I'm here alone. I don't know really what they want from the song. I have like a minute and a half of an iPhone recording with a dry guitar and a vocal and just a direction. So yeah, it's pretty hard. I think it's different for every project, and I sort of essentially just wing it, but an educated wing it, you know. It's not just a stab in the dark. But yeah, I sort of just go through and make the song myself and then send it through to them. And I'm like, if you like this, let's move forward and we'll arrange time like this, and sort of just take it one step at a time, you know.
How do you know that you're going in the right direction when you get something as, I guess, as rough as just an iPhone demo?
Yeah, that's you kind of don't, do you? You just hope for the best and trust your gut instinct. Yeah, exactly, man. Just trust that I'm not, not taking this the complete opposite way of what they want. Fingers crossed, try and make it as cool as I can. And generally I just base it off, if I like it, hopefully they do too. And that's about as far as it goes.
Well, I think the main thing that a producer's getting hired for is their taste.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's kind of the most important part of the job, you know, being able to take something that is pretty plain musically and make it awesome, whether it's through sonic brilliance of good mixing or just a great arrangement and great songwriting. Like you knowing the ins and outs of a genre and how it's structured and how the music is created and how it's layered and how everything's arranged and comes together and moves along together. I think that's probably, undebatably the most important part of producing, quote unquote, because it's a loose term these days.
It definitely is a loose term, but I feel like with producers, there's a spectrum of like producers that are very, very much just about engineering and getting the band to sound good, and then producers who, will do what you do. And it's kind of two completely different approaches almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
One's not better than the other, I think.
I agree, man. And usually I feel like people are definitely better at one or the other. That's the one thing I've noticed. Yeah, I've got a lot of friends who are awesome engineers, so they make me just look like an infant with what I do, like it's a school project or something. But they can't really write a song, so they rely on having a good band come through and have their music prepared, ready to go, and they can just make a great guitarist sound like a great guitarist, you know.
They make it sound like it's their best day.
Exactly,
ever.
Yeah, but a band could come in with the worst song ever and they will still leave with the worst song. It's just going to be really nicely mixed.
So I think one of the hardest things for a producer that's establishing themselves is gaining the trust needed for a band to allow them to mangle their songs, basically.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
How did you go about establishing that?
There's a few main approaches. I guess the number one thing would be exactly what you said, where it comes in handy to be able to play multiple instruments. I'm not a guitarist, but I can play guitar. You know those people.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a guitarist.
You can do what you need to do to get the job done.
Exactly. I can play to a very editable standard, which is cool. So a lot of the time, if I have an idea and I'm like, this idea is so sick, I need this band to take on this idea, I'll just be like, guys, I've got an idea, give me 5 minutes and I'll make it and I'll show you. And usually that's the thing, if they can hear it, kind of like you said, if they can hear it, they don't even have to track. I can just play it exactly how I want, exactly how I'm thinking it, exactly how I'm hearing it, put it all in for them, and generally they will like that. But there is the credibility thing for sure. I remember, mostly in the first few years of doing this, it was very hard to pick up a band, at least a good band, and be like, hey, I'm hearing this, why don't you give it a shot? And they'd just look back and say, well, I wrote this part intentionally to be like this, so I don't really want to.
Fuck off.
Yeah, and then you're stuck there like, sweet, man, that's cool. Let's just go with your shitty idea and we'll call it a day.
What's your attitude when your ideas do get shot down?
I think I say this all the time. I feel like a broken record saying it, but I always say, I think this idea is sick, but at the end of the day, it's your song, and if you're happy, I'm happy. Because ultimately, you get paid to make people happy with what they leave with.
Yeah, but you are getting paid for your opinion too. So where's the line?
Exactly. That's the hard middle line, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it depends how strongly I feel about the idea. I've definitely found myself saying to people like, your opinion is your opinion and we'll do whatever you want to do.
And you're wrong.
Yes, exactly. But if your opinion is this, your opinion's wrong. Yeah, I've definitely said that before. But at the end of the day, I will cave if someone feels, it's like a battle of who feels stronger, who can convince the other one.
I mean, sometimes the artist is right when it comes to that stuff.
Yes, definitely.
And I think that sort of thing is best kind of established up front, like the parameters. I think some artists are looking for that.
Yeah.
They don't give a fuck if you play everything. They just want something awesome to put their name on. But some artists are just not okay with that. But the thing about it is they're usually pretty upfront about it at the beginning, from what I've noticed, except for at the local levels. It's a little bit more confused at that level, I think. But once bands are national, in my experience, they're pretty down to do whatever it takes and have a pretty clear vision and understanding of how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And if I'm honest, I actually haven't really dealt with that many people who aren't open to ideas. It seems to be much more uncommon than, people who, like you say, up front say, if you hear anything sick, please tell us and we'll give it a shot. Like, we want your input.
So it seems like you're getting clients that are coming to you specifically because of what you do.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I was going to get to as well with the credibility sort of thing. Most people that come to me have either heard something I've done and they're like, I want to sound like that, so make me sound like that. Do whatever you need and make it happen. And and it's my responsibility to make it work. Or it's because of, my band or another band I've worked with that sounds similar to my band, I guess. And they're like, we really like what you do, your direction, your songwriting. And we're trying to head that direction, but we don't really know what we're doing. So please piece it together for us. So yeah, it's mostly people coming to me for the writing aspect. That's my most common job, is people saying they like what I do and they want that. So can I do it?
Do you consider yourself a writer first and a producer second?
Yes, definitely. Man, I guess it's a common thing. Everyone probably has it, but I listen to my mixing and I listen to other people, like particularly people who have been on this podcast, and I'm like, God damn it. Like, why?
There's some killers on this podcast.
Yeah, man. Like some of the world's best. And I'm like, Jesus, my stuff sounds so bad. But I think it's the songwriting that matches up. Yeah. Sad feeling is every day, man. I just get in my car and drive home and tears roll down. It's not a good time. But I think, I do think the area where I have actually something of a lot of value is writing. Absolutely. And it's been that way since I was young. I've not really ever had a natural ear for what sounds great, but writing has been something in my life since I was probably 5 years old or so.
So it seems like production is more of a means to an end for you.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's why I started too. I wanted to be able to get my band recorded, but my main thing was writing for it. But going to a studio just was out of the question because it was so expensive. So it would have been like $30,000 when we were unsigned. So I just decided to learn how to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I never had like a passion for production or anything. I just did it because it was a means to an end.
Yeah, well, I was kind of the same, exactly the same, actually. But growing up, I was always like an individual sort of solo musician. I really liked folk music growing up. And I just remember my dad having a little computer and a little sort of studio set up, just with sort of Logic and a Mac and a funny little interface. And I'd record myself on that constantly, and I'd always just be trying to record my guitar and my voice, and it wasn't to make it sound good. It was just to write music and finish music. It was never because I wanted to be, the next greatest producer in the world or make my guitar sound better than this guitar. It was just, I just liked to make songs and make music, and it kind of started and ended there.
Well, what point did trying to make it sound better enter the equation?
It's an interesting question. I guess where it probably would have been when I had to start showing people my music and realize it sounded bad.
Well, that'll do it.
Yeah, it didn't really bother me if it was just in my ears and I was just putting down ideas. But
Yeah, because you know what it's supposed to be. You've got the vision.
yeah, exactly. I listen with my imagination and I hear it sounding incredible, but it definitely didn't. That's for sure.
But nobody else has your imagination.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I remember just getting in touch with some friends like that were involved in audio production, and I was like, hey man, like, how do I make this sound good? What plugins do I use? And I was using Logic, and it had all these sick plugins, and my friends were like, Reaper is really big in Australia. So all my friends were like, dude, use Reaper, and I got Reaper, and I was like, sick.
Evaluation for life.
Yeah, exactly, man. No license, just wait that 5 seconds. And I was like, I'm ready to be a big producer, man. I've got the new program.
Use Reaper.
Yeah, and then I realized it comes with like 6 plugins, and I was like, damn, like, I have no like reverb. I can't make music with this. So uneducated me went out and bought Pro Tools, thinking it was going to be like the key to success. I was like 16, bear in mind, I didn't really know anything. And I was like, all the big guys use Pro Tools. If I use Pro Tools, I'll be big too. And then I was like, Pro Tools is the same. I only have like Air EQ or whatever it's called and nothing else. How can I make a song sound good? I have no like Logic sound libraries, no Logic strings, no Logic this or Logic presets. And then, yeah, I guess I had to start diving into the world of third-party plugins, and I didn't even know what they were. I didn't know they existed. And hit up some friends, and yeah, my friend introduced me to like Valhalla Room, I think was the first one. And I just remember being like gobsmacked, man. I was, this reverb's incredible. I still use it every day.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
Love it. And yeah, that's sort of where it all started. I was like, this reverb is so cool compared to my like reverb preset I used on, granted the Logic plugins are sick, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I started playing around with not presets, and I was like, this is cool, man. This is actually really addictive. Maybe I'll start recording other things and try and get it to sound good and start putting stuff out. And I guess it all blossoms from there, doesn't it? You get like one little taste for making something sound a little less bad, and you're like, this is cool.
A little less bad is the way I've always looked at music in general. Like I always thought of guitar, for instance, I'm a guitar player. I always thought of it as sucking less, basically.
Yes, I still think
you're not really getting better.
Less.
You're sucking less.
Still, man, every day I'm like, this mix is a little less bad than it was. I'm doing good. This is progress.
At what point did people actually start paying you to make stuff sound better or write for them? Like how long after you decided to take the plunge and get Pro Tools?
Probably a good couple of years. Like this is, again, when I was maybe 16 years old or something. I started recording covers and putting those, again, just singer-songwriter, like me on my acoustic guitar singing very sad love songs because I thought that's what was cool. And then I'd put those out on Facebook and things, and people would be like, damn, this sounds cool. And my friends would be like, hey, I didn't know you could record. Can I record covers with you? And I was like, of course. I had like a good group of musician friends, so I started recording their covers. And then progressively, my covers and their covers started to sound a bit cooler than just having an iPhone in front of you. So their friends were like, hey, man, your friend that records your covers, can I come and record my covers with him? And then I remember I recorded my first EP, if you can call it that. This was so bad, like the worst. I still have it, and I can never show anyone. It's so bad. But it's my...
That bad?
Yeah, awful, man. Like, there's no words. I don't have the vocabulary to describe how bad this was. But my friends decided they wanted to
hear it.
Maybe I'll send it to you after the podcast. My friends, yeah, they decided they wanted to do like a folky EP, and they were pretty good musicians as well. So it's hard to make them sound bad, but I managed to still.
You managed. Got the job done.
Exactly. So I got a little Apogee duet, which was actually pretty sick. Looking back on it, I kind of wish I still had it.
That is a really good little interface.
Yeah, it was sick, man. I had that and a Rode NT1A, and that's it. And it was just in a sort of empty shed. We call it a shed. Do you have sheds in America? Is that an American?
We have
word?
sheds.
Okay, cool. I've never heard an American say shed. So yeah, we had
They say shed, I promise.
Nice. Maybe I was thinking of garage or something. Who knows?
We have those too.
Damn, now I just look like an idiot.
We don't have drop bears though.
Yeah, we got an abundance of those. So it was an empty shed, which later, I'll get into that, it got sort of turned into a studio as I got older, which was cool. But we had this empty shed couple of rugs on a concrete floor. So this thing was loud as hell, as you can imagine. I saw studios with rugs and I was like, this needs some rugs. That's like the studio thing to do. So we had a coffee table, a little desk, a little Mac, an Apogee Duet and a Rode NT1A and a very noisy room. And I decided to record these guys' EP. Good friends of mine, so I did it for free. I hadn't charged for anything then anyway, so I probably would have done it for free anyway. And we have this thing in Australia called schoolies, which I guess would I feel like it would be like spring break in America, where it's like...
It's called schooling?
Schoolies.
Schoolies. Okay.
Yeah, it's when you finish your last year of school.
Okay, we don't have that.
Yeah, nice. Good, I'm onto something.
Yeah. We figured it out.
Yeah, you finish your last year of school and you basically just go and party. It's for like 2 weeks. It's really common along the east coast of Australia. And yeah, you basically just go out and party for 2 weeks. And I remember taking my school laptop with me because it had this EP on it and I had to mix and, quote unquote, mix and master this EP. And I just remember everyone partying and me being on my laptop trying to like mix and master this EP and use... I think I went back to Logic because I was using Logic like Flex Tune, you know, that pitch correction thing in Logic.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to use that awfully. I can't explain how bad it sounds. And I was 18 at the time, and that's when, I was like, this is taking up my time. I should be partying with my friends. I think I need to start charging people for this. And that's kind of where I started being like, all right, if you record a cover with me, I need like $50 and we'll call it even and I'll do it. And it would take like 2 days to make this cover. And I was like, $50, that's cool. I've got like my leg into paid work. This is sick.
I've told people lots of times that that the best thing they could possibly do to get their name out there is record themselves.
Yeah.
And put out stuff, whether it's originals or covers or whatever. Just record yourself well enough for the people around you to take notice.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that's kind of exactly what happened. And then after a certain amount of time, it would have been a good 2 or 3 years at least, my friends started being more reputable than me. So when I recorded them, it would get my name out there more than my own music. And that's sort of what started the spread. And if I'm honest, that was probably only at the start of last year or so, or maybe the year before. It wasn't that long ago. It hasn't been a long time. But I started, just recording a slightly more reputable people, bands that were around Australia, getting some notice. Or even just, certain members from bands that wanted to do side projects. I'd pick so hard, man. I'd reach out to these people and be like, hey, man, have you heard like this song by Sia? You should do a vocal cover. It would sound so sick. I will make it for you. In fact, I already have. Here's the instrumental. You should come and sing it. Just reaching out so desperately.
So hold on. Let's talk about that for a second, because
of course,
that can either be the most annoying thing on earth or it can work. It can work if you do it right.
Yeah, I didn't do it right for a long time. Let's just say that.
So what went into doing it right? Like, was it just a numbers game or?
I think what went into doing it right is that I eventually only did it to people that I was at least on some sort of like association level with.
You weren't just bombing randoms.
No, I tried that. And even if I got really nice responses and I was like, sick, like this band from England I just hit up about working together, it's going to happen, and then they just disappear. They were obviously just being nice dudes that couldn't really turn me down.
Yeah, why? I mean, if you think about it, why would they work with you if they never heard of you?
I wouldn't.
Or just some dude off the internet.
If a guy from England hit me up and was like, hey, we should really work together, I would not say yes. Let's just say that.
It depends which guy from England.
That's a good point, actually. If it was me from England, I would probably say no.
There's some great producers in England, but I think that's the key right there. What you said is that you started working when you were talking to people that were already in your network.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's the same now. Like, I very rarely approach someone that I've never well, actually, not really, very rarely, never. I never approach someone that I haven't spoken to or am not friends with and say, you should work with me. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's a good idea. Maybe I just don't have the pride or something, but everyone that's played a show has had it where some guy walks up to them after their set and he's like, hey, there's no introduction. There's no like, let's have a drink. Let's have some good fun and a laugh. Let's not get to know each other. It's just, hey, we should record. And you are not going to look that person in the eye and say, totally, I'm coming. Like, when do you want me there? I'm there.
When you phrase it like that, it really illustrates how bad of an idea it is.
Yeah.
It's a big decision for an artist to decide to go with a producer, even if they're a local artist, even if they're just doing one cover. It's still a big decision for them. It still is important to them.
Totally.
It's super rare to just do that with some stranger.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're saying, it's a big... I imagine myself, I've only ever worked with a few people because of that exact reason. It's a big...
As an artist, you being the artist, them being the producer.
Yeah, me being on the other end with my own music, I've worked with a few producers, but not many.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because you take that's not a decision you make lightly, you know. It's something you think about and you listen to all this person's entire back catalogue. Then you find one record they did that stinks and you don't even think that the band must have been crap. You're like, nah, that person's not a good producer now. And then you can't work with them and then you start again. It is a big decision, and ultimately it should be. You know, that person has a big impact on your sound, and it is something
and on your future.
Yeah, and it is something that should be taken seriously because, yeah, the impact on the sound down to like finances, everything. It's a big call to make, and I wouldn't make that decision on someone that I don't know.
Yeah, the thing that I encourage people to do if they're going to a show is to just try to get to know people.
Yes,
that's it. Don't
exactly.
try to sell them anything. Just make friends. That's it. Make friends.
Yeah, well, that's ultimately how I ended up working with Slaves, which is obviously a big one for little old me, where we were on tour together. We're both our bands are sort of good friends anyway, but we were on tour together, and the concept of us just making a song for fun slowly came up over the course of a few weeks in conversation, but it was never us sitting in a tour van and me turning around to this big shiny band called Slaves and being like, hey guys, I actually own a music studio.
Guys, you want to record?
Yeah, I'd love it if you came in and did a song. I think I could do a really good job of your set. Like that conversation never happened. You know, it was a long time of friendship, and then kind of we both mutually met in the middle and we were like, okay, let's do something for fun and let's just see how it goes.
How did that develop?
Well, actually, it was, they won't mind me saying this because they've been pretty public about it. It started with the song Heavier, and we had the same manager at the time, my band and Slaves. And the manager was like, hey man, obviously everything happened with Johnny departing the band and them getting Matt in. And they were like, it's looking like Matt's going to be permanent. We want to start doing some music, blah, blah, blah. And they were looking for a producer. And the manager, who I won't name, was just like, hey, Jimmy, how do you feel about like trying to work with these guys? Maybe you should try and write something and just show them what you can do. So I wrote like the sort of intro, the first verse and the chorus of Heavier and just sung it with my own voice. It was a pretty bad sounding demo, but the song idea was cool. And I sent it to them and they were so hard on being like, we don't want a songwriter. Like we're a band, we write our own songs, it's fine. And then they heard it and they were like, hey, this is cool. This is cool. Like this sounds really Slavesy. And I tried so hard. There was like all these dotted eighth guitars and like moody bass, a bit of an R&B feel. Tried so hard to make it Slavesy. And yeah, they were like, this is sick. This sounds like Slaves. Maybe we should do it. And that's sort of how it all unfolded. And I have done that a few times where...
So again, you let the work speak for itself.
Exactly, yeah. Even in that sense, man, even with friends, I'll very rarely just be like, trust me, my work is cool and we will make it happen. I still do it as well. Like working with new people, that Glasgow group that I mentioned, for example, when they reached out, it's a sound that I haven't really worked with. I'm confident that I could do it justice, but it's a sound I haven't really worked with. So I was like, give me like 2 days and just in my spare time, I'm just going to whip up like a 30-second snippet of your song. And I did that again, just with my own voice, my own playing, and was like, this is the direction I would take it. Let me know what you think. It's not a thing I charge for. It doesn't take that long. Realistically, it takes like half an hour. And I was like, yeah, let me know if this is the direction you like. And again, that's the work speaking for itself. You reach out with a snippet of what it would sound like if you were to work on it. Because everyone has a vibe and a direction. You know, you're trying to get a certain sound out of a certain producer. If it's not their sound, can be a bit like just beating a dead horse and not going to happen. So
absolutely. So it's interesting to me that you said that you tried to make it, talking about the Slaves song, you tried to do it in their style. So I think one of the toughest things to do as a writer is to put your own style aside and take on the style of somebody else. So how do you do that? How do you get into the headspace?
I think a lot of it would have to come from being a genuine a fan of the sound. I've been saying this recently because I've gone into doing some R&B and bordering on like EDM things, but I don't find it hard to make those genres in terms of the production. I don't find it hard to create those genres because I'm a fan of the genre. So I know it inside and out. I know what it sounds like. I know what's cool and what's not cool. And it's the same with like that Slave sound. There's all these bands, kind of the Eric Ron list of like Too Close to Touch and Slaves and like the New Word Alive. And I'm like, this is so sick. I love this genre. I know it back to front. I'm just going to make it like it's kind of that direction.
Your band's in that genre too, kind of.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when I heard it, when I checked your band out, it was like, okay, I get it. This makes sense.
That sounds like a slightly disappointing, okay, I get it.
No, not at all.
Okay, cool.
I understood why the bands you're working with are working with you when I heard your band.
Yes. Okay, I get you. Yeah. Well, that's what we said from the start as well. Like, it works. I'm a fan of their sound. They can tell that by the music that I write. I love that genre. I think it almost comes down to just knowing the genre. If someone came up to me and I had, say, if I very hypothetically, because this is not the case, had like the best sounding acoustic drum kit in the world and like the most glorious acoustic guitars and vocal sound, I still couldn't make a country record just because I don't really know what goes into it. I don't listen to the genre. I don't know how it's arranged or composed. As opposed to that sound I've listened to for years. I know it inside and out, and I know what makes it great and what makes it not great. Well, at least I hope I do. That sounds a bit too self-assured, but I like to think I know what makes it cool and what doesn't make it cool, and how to arrange a track.
Well, hey, as long as people agree with you.
Yeah, let's hope so.
You're employed.
Yes,
that's what
exactly. Man, I've digressed so far, I forgot what we were even talking about.
We were talking about taking on somebody's style.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to, well, not comes down to, but it makes it so much easier if you are a genuine fan of that style. I've definitely done songs and records before where I am not into the style and I'm trying to make it work, and no matter how hard I try, I just can't get it done.
What, do you just let them know you can't get it done?
Yeah.
You just hit them up and say, I'm not the right guy?
It's definitely, that's a good point. That's a learning experience, isn't it? Where you learn maybe just not to take on jobs that you're not really going to do a good job on just for the money, because it doesn't pay off in the end. I've done that before where I'm like, all right, I have a spare month. I could get paid here. Let's take on this like 80s pop band sort of thing and try and make it work. And it's just the biggest failure of all time. So now I know that's, again, back to that Glasgow group. That's another reason why I do that sort of uncharted territory. Let me pitch you an idea, and if you like it, we can work together. If not, it's fine. No offense taken. Like, we just won't do it, because if I'm not going to do it justice, if I'm not going to do a good job in the direction that you want, it's going to be hell for both of us. So
I think that with your style of production is super important. I think with the more engineer style producer, they should say yes to everything when they're starting out.
Yes.
But for the writing producer, it makes sense that you would turn things down that you're not feeling, because how are you supposed to write something that you're not feeling? Like, if the bands are coming to you to basically create the whole fucking thing or just like do intense surgery on it, how are you going to do that if you're not feeling it?
Exactly. I genuinely don't think it's possible, no matter how good you are. I should rephrase that. It's not possible for me, given my current skill set, I've realized. Maybe someone else can do it that's better. But if I'm not into the genre, and it's not a thing of, like, I don't like it, so I don't want to work on it. It's just, if I don't know the genre very well, I probably won't be able to write a good song in that genre. Naturally, like, it makes complete sense. To me, at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely, that was a learning experience. I got myself into some silly situations when I was a bit younger, trying to write songs for genres that I just don't like and don't understand and don't listen to, and it has never worked out.
So I totally do also subscribe to specializing and knowing what you specialize in. I mean, I did that when I was making music. I've done it with URM too. Like, for instance, I know the metal and rock world inside and out. That's the world I come from. I do not know the rap world or country world, and a lot of people have asked, why don't we go into that? why would we? There's still a lot of ground to cover in this, and I'd have to start from scratch in worlds that I don't know anything about or even care about, as opposed to this one that I've been in forever, decades at this point.
Well, you don't go to a carpenter and ask them why don't they try plumbing. Like they're doing carpentry and it's fine, it's working and it's all good.
Yep.
It's a different world to go into something else. I think that's just a common misconception, isn't it? There's no such. It's not all just music. There's very, very different skill sets in different veins of music that.
Different cultures.
Yeah, exactly. Different understandings, different everything. It's different worlds. And that's something I think everyone kind of learns the hard way early on. You try and work on things and you're like, damn, I'm really butchering this specific project, and you might not even be just butchering that project. You might just butcher that genre when you try, because you are not good at it. You don't like it. You don't understand it. You haven't done it enough. Whatever the reason is, I think it's fine to not be good at a certain thing and be good at another, or not focus on being good at a certain thing and focus on excelling at another, if it's true to what you're into, to put it simply.
I think that it's important for people to expand their horizons, but not into things that they don't like just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
For instance, I don't like jazz at all, and I hated having to learn it in school, and I kind of rebelled against learning it because I don't listen to it, I don't like it, I don't want to have anything to do with it, and other people do, but there's so much to pick up in genres that I do love. Why not spend my time on those?
Exactly.
And yeah, if you can definitely expand your tastes, but why worry about something that doesn't do it for you? There's so much out there that you could work on that does do it for you.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, but phrased by a much wiser man. But yeah, exactly. And I think it's fine not to like something, and I say to people in so many different worlds, whether it's like touring or producing, just basically music in general, like if you don't like it, probably don't do it, because there is not actually that much good about it if you're not enjoying what you're doing. That the lifestyle in most music instances that I've seen kind of sucks. There's just this epic reward of doing what you love, which is really sweet. But in terms of every other aspect of life, for your relationships, most often your bank and your time and your sleep and your diet and your body and your mind, it's probably pretty bad. But you just have this like fueling fire of love for what you're doing that just gets this nice little boost every time you work on it. And it's really good, and you can't really live another way. But if you don't have that, I feel like it's probably wise to steer clear, because it's just not that good.
I completely agree. If you don't have that, you probably won't last.
Yes.
So there's two things that will happen if you don't have that sort of fire in you. Number one, you won't work hard enough to get good enough to be competitive. And number two, you won't last because you're not going to work hard enough to be good enough to be competitive, and it'll be a very disappointing situation.
Absolutely. And you ultimately will not be happy in any of those scenarios. So as you see it all the time with touring bands as well, you look at them and they're in their tour van and they're like, they've had their time, or they never got their time, or even they're in the middle of their time as a band and they're trying to tour and they don't get along as a group, and they're so sad in their van and all bitter and hating each other, and their relationships are crap. And you look at them and you're like, why? Why don't you just go and live a probably normal and very happy, healthy life? Why do you put yourself through all the hardship of being a musician if you don't have the enjoyment aspect? It's so strange. Different topic, but yeah, probably a different conversation for a different time. But it's very strange.
Well, out of curiosity, have you ever thought about a plan B?
I think about a plan B probably every time I get a project that I'm not loving, but then I get a project that I do love, which is pretty regularly, thank God. And I'm like, yeah, no, this is sick. I'm in the right spot. Actually, probably more regularly I think of a plan B, but I don't have one. I just think that maybe
it might be a good idea, but I kind of don't believe in plan Bs.
Well, I think if you have a plan B, it's kind of just, it's not your plan B, it's your next destination, because this isn't going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you've got a plan B, that means you don't really believe in plan A. And you kind of need to believe in plan A.
Yeah, exactly. And there's times where I've like lost faith in plan A and I've gone out and gotten a part-time job, or I've picked back up on vocal coaching, which I did a lot of when I was younger, and I was like, I'm going to start this side hustle that will end up my whole hustle, and then I won't produce anymore. And then I do that for like several hours and realize it's the wrong call, and then just bail instantly, and I'm just back on plan A, and I'm like, all right, cool. But I think that's normal too. You know, a lot of people...
Yes.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be a certain kind of weird to just make music and never think maybe I should do something else. Never get tempted.
Yeah, I agree that you would have to be a certain kind of weird, and to not feel any fear is not normal. Like I was talking about this with a friend who's trying to do something entrepreneurial right now, and he's talking about how he has to do it, but it's kind of scary. And I was telling him, yeah, of course it's scary. That's anything like that's worth doing has inherent risk in it. And if there's inherent risk, it means there's something scary about it. And so if you're not feeling that, either you're an idiot or there's something wrong with you. Either you're an idiot because you're not understanding the situation, or there's something wrong with you that you can't feel things.
Yeah.
But you should be scared. What makes the difference is how you manage that feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. Got to take that feeling of fear and manifest it into something that makes you work, I guess. It's kind of the only option.
Is that what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Because I get scared, man. Scared of so many things. I'm like, damn, I'm scared I'm going to blow this album. So I'm like, okay, well, I just can't blow the album and I need to make it cool. Or I'm scared, this drum edit isn't going to sound good. So I just have to go and edit the drums and make sure it sounds good. And then it's, fear overcome, and it turns out the equation was really simple, which is a good feeling. But then comes the next fear, and it never ends.
So what's interesting about that is that it seems like you deal with it in a very logical way.
Yes.
Like if the fear is one specific thing, then it seems like you just do like a calculation of how to solve that specific problem, as opposed to letting it spiral. But I think a lot of people will be like, I'm going to blow the record, and then my life's going to fall apart, and then.
Yeah.
They let it get out of control, as opposed to just tackling the issue.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's really common, and I think everyone's done it.
Well, yeah, that's how I know.
Yeah, exactly, man. I'm just fortunate that it seems in most scenarios at the 11th hour, my logic swoops in and takes control, like you said, and it's okay. But that's definitely not in all circumstances. But even after all those little things, all the little speed bumps that come up, which is like every second day, there is still the looming distant fear of what happens if I turn like 40 and I haven't made any money and I have never made a good song and I don't know what to do. That's like my biggest fear, man. I'm like, damn.
Yeah, I used to have that. I used to have that fear.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's probably
Scary.
the most common one. It's the one that keeps me up at night, and that's the one where I'm like, I'll just push that a little bit to the back and try and live life as if that fear doesn't exist. And then if people ask, I'll probably say it doesn't exist, but it definitely does.
Oh, that fear drove me for a long time. The being a complete failure, because I never had a plan B. So if I didn't make it work, then I really would be a fuck up. It's not like I'd have a real career and then just not have music work out. Like I don't consider that to be failure at all. I know that some people who want a music career who don't do it but have another career, they kind of secretly feel weird about it, but I don't think they should. That they didn't fail. They did something with their life. But I think the fear for people like us is, since we don't have plan B, if we don't make it work, then that is actually a pretty bad situation.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's the scary thing. And if I did get to a point in my life, which like I'm still quite young, so if something comes up, say like in my 30s, and I'm like,
yeah, you got time.
Yeah, well, if in 10 years something comes up in my life and I'm like, that's actually kind of sick. Plan B to me is kind of looking a little more shiny than plan A, and I jump ship to plan B. Like you're saying, I would not consider that like I've failed at music. It's that I think as long as I'm, well, universal me, so universal you, everyone, I think as long as you're going after what is awesome to you and what's going to ultimately bring you some happiness, I don't think the failure aspect really exists. But like you're saying, if it's in my mindset right now where I'm like, nothing else is that appealing, there is kind of just this music thing, and it doesn't work out, then I'll be that guy that's like 40 and doesn't really know what to do and sort of just stares out the window, sad, reminiscing on when I thought I knew what to do.
Don't let that happen.
I'll try.
How old are you?
Just turned 24.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, man. It was months ago, but I'll still take it. I say just because it makes me sound
Happy birthday anyways.
Thanks, man. You too.
Yeah, you've got some time, but it does go quickly.
Well, I'm realizing that now. Like, I know 24 is young, but I feel like just the other day I was still in school. And,
yeah, just get ready.
Oh, man. And I hear it gets faster and faster. It's a scary concept.
It goes into overdrive, basically.
Yeah, that's what I'm told.
Yeah, so I think that people in their 20s should work their fucking ass off to establish their career, because then you can really, really, really profit and do awesome stuff in your 30s and 40s. Like, I actually think that for producers and songwriters and creatives, their like peak age is like late 40s, early 50s. So
damn, nice.
If you set yourself up through your 20s and 30s for that, you can fucking crush it. But a lot of people in their 20s fuck around.
Yeah, you blow those 10 years and then you get stuck.
I don't think that 30's too late or something. You know, I've seen people who started mixing at 35 and by 40 were doing platinum records. That happens. Doesn't happen very often, but it happens.
Of course.
Yeah, they're outliers though. By and large, fucking work your ass off in your 20s.
Absolutely, man. That's really cool to hear from you, actually. I feel like I should have paid you to come on here. This is good for me. I think I'm probably getting more out of it than you.
I'm getting paid, don't worry.
Oh, nice. I'm jealous now.
All right. I'll send you an invoice though.
Oh, sweet, of course.
Yeah, I do by the hour for psychological services.
Yeah, just the therapy. Well, funny. That's I've heard this one a lot, so it's basically common knowledge. But isn't it funny that as a producer, you're kind of almost as much a psychologist as you are a producer? Like, so much of it, I guess, especially in the writing sense, getting these things out of people, you spend so much of your time talking to people about their lives and their hardships and their joys that sometimes I go through like a 10-hour session and we've done like 3 hours of work. I almost feel guilty because I spent 7 hours just talking them through what's going on in their lives and then writing a song about it. And that's just part of the job. It's a weird thing.
Well, I mean, you kind of have to go through that to get to the point where the song is honest sometimes, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's not really 3 hours of work. It's 3 hours of making music, but a full day of work. That talking is work, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, again, phrased by a wiser man than myself.
So I have some friends who have worked high up in the rap world, and they've all told me that is pretty normal, at least in the sessions that they were on, to like, people will show up to the studio late afternoon, friends will come by, they'll like smoke weed, listen to music, hang out, shoot the shit, and by midnight they're ready to track something, and they'll track 1 or 2 verses, and that's it. That's it. 12-hour day. And on the outside, that sounds
awesome.
A lot of waste. It sounds like a lot of wasted time.
Absolutely.
But then again, the level of artists that he's talking about, that he's worked with, like, these are artists that are fucking successful as shit. So who's to say that that's wasting time? If that's what it takes to, those verses are going to make a lot of people millions of dollars. So maybe that's what they need in order to get into the right frame of mind to just deliver the goods. And they don't need 12 hours to deliver the goods. They need 11 hours to get primed for it and 15 minutes to actually deliver.
Yeah, that's a good point. Damn, that's an interesting world, though. I feel like I'd lose my mind so quickly.
Well, it's not for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you were saying, it's not the world for myself or probably you either. But that's an interesting point, isn't it? Maybe I should start doing that and start telling people, don't worry, we don't have to record yet. You got 7 hours to get ready, and then we'll try.
Well, you know, I know producers who have behaved that way in metal, and their careers have fallen apart.
Really?
Yeah, like just wake up super late, smoke a bunch of weed, start working at like 10 p.m., stuff like that. I've seen producers who had great careers, like making records that were, you know, in the Billboard Top 40, doing great, getting all the metal bands, like the big ones, and now they're getting nothing. And a lot of it had to do with behaving kind of like that. So I think certain things that work in some worlds don't work in the others. Bands aren't cool with that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And bands in general, I mean, there are some bands that are more partiers than others, but in my experience with bands, you need to be earlier than them, and you need to be ready to work all day, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. And there's pretty commonly that, you know, the member of the band that's like the whip cracker, you know.
Yep.
You start derailing for like 2.5 minutes with your eyes off the screen. And this guy's like, everyone, back to work.
Yeah, exactly. That's you have to be cool with, you have to be able to basically thrive in that kind of environment, I think, if you're going to be working with bands.
Absolutely. That's where I'm really thankful. I don't know what it is. When I was younger, I tried to believe in the whole, you know, the musician's hour thing where you're writing a song at 3:30 a.m. because it's what someone else does and it works for them and they're a big star, so you try and mimic their
liars.
lifestyle. Yeah, probably. But me, man, I don't know what it is, but if I wake up super early and I've had like a good sleep and I just drown myself in coffee for the morning, have a good meal, and then come to it, I swear I'm most creative at like 9:30 a.m. or something.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm just always trying to structure myself to work 9 to 5 as if I was working a normal job because, as you know, this is anything but a normal job. So trying to bring some sort of level of structure is really nice. And that's a bit of a new thing for me, actually, like in the last few months. But loving it. I think it's awesome. I think my songwriting's better. My productivity is better. My level of, I guess I'd call it enthusiasm and care is higher. I think I'm a pretty enthusiastic dude anyway. I like to think so, at least. So it's all turned out really good. And I've worked with people as well who don't do that, kind of like you were saying, who work through the middle of the night. And I like to think I understand, kind of, if that's their thing that gets them creative and they pump out killer records all the time. And even though it's a bit unorthodox, it works for them. But I definitely don't like it on the other end, like if I'm the artist, and I don't like doing it myself as a worker either. So yeah, I do like the structured approach. I like trying to have a set amount of hours. Obviously, sometimes we go over if we're on a roll, or sometimes we wrap up a little early. If it's like, you know, if it's 4 o'clock and we finish tracking drums, I'm not going to set up an amp to try and track till 5. That's stupid. But yeah, I like the structured approach, and I think it's improved my work in absolutely every area, which is cool.
I used to do the unstructured go all night thing. Fuck that.
It sucks, man. Life is so hard doing that.
Yeah, it's not good, in my opinion. I think that when you're younger, you also have a lot of energy to pull that off, so you don't notice. Sometimes the amount of energy you have offsets how bad that is for productivity. But I think that people don't do well because of that kind of schedule. They do well despite that kind of schedule, in my opinion.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, absolutely. That's so true.
Yeah, I think it's pretty proven that creativity is a finite resource, and it regenerates when you sleep and dream. But it's you have the most of it in the morning.
Yeah,
right around when you wake up for those first 3-4 hours. That's peak time, and after that, it's not like you can't be creative, but you're not going to have another peak time in the day.
Yeah,
you just won't.
I totally agree, and I feel it in my lifestyle too. I'm very into my health lately. Something has come over me, and suddenly it's a focus, which is kind of cool because it's improved my.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's improved my life in and out of the studio, but definitely a lot in the studio. Everything is better. My energy levels are better. Throughout the day is better. But a big one is waking up a little earlier. I also just moved to the Gold Coast in Australia, which is kind of cool because it's a city right on the beach. So I walk out of my front door and walk 100 meters and walk along the beach and just listen to music or a podcast or something in the morning. And life is so good. And at that moment, that is, like you're saying, where I am my most creative. And then I often find myself trying to like scurry along the beach and rush home, talk to my partner and be like, can't talk, I've got to go. Like, I've got this idea. I need to get out of here. And I'm at the studio just buzzing and ready to go in the morning, like with vibrant ideas. As opposed to, like you said, when I was a little younger, there's been times where I'd sleep until like midday because I went to bed at 5 a.m. And I wake up and it takes me hours to feel any sort of goodness. And then I, slowly drag myself into a studio and wipe my eyes and try and create some sort of vibe. And then maybe by like 11 p.m. I might have some sort of subpar idea that I can work into something salvageable. But yeah, obviously the prior statement is the better one. And I definitely feel it in my lifestyle.
What caused you to change it?
Mostly my brother. Shout out to my brother. He'd never listen to this. He's not a musician, but he's a competitive bodybuilder, so not like me. And he's just been drilling me since I was 18, being like, you got to go to the gym, you got to eat better, you got to just let me train you. And I finally succumbed to that. And to be fair, it's been a genuinely life-changing thing.
Has he been training you?
Yes, yeah, which I'm not meant to be in a gym. Like if you saw me in real life, you'd be like, oh, you're 6'3" and you could blow away on a windy day. You don't belong in the gym.
Maybe that means you do belong in the gym.
Yeah, true. I should be in the gym more so than anyone else. But he has been training me and it's been really good. Again, life-changing in so many ways that I didn't expect either, which is cool.
How long have you been training for?
Since just before coronavirus, so probably 6 months now. It was really sad as well because it was like 1 month in and gyms closed and I was just on fire, so excited. Then like that, all the gyms were gone and I was like, all right, well, there goes that. And I just tried to keep some sort of motivation throughout the whole period where gyms were closed, which was hard, but worked and still going now. And again, it's awesome. I genuinely think that my mind is better for writing now that I'm a healthier person, which is so unexpected, but so awesome.
I mean, I think it totally goes hand in hand. I decided to take control of that about 18 months ago. And
nice, man.
I'm like the sharpest I've ever been. It's totally linked.
It's awesome. I think that's exactly how I feel. I'm like, all right, these are feeling like the best days I've ever had. I got to try and do something with these. This is sick. Again, as opposed to not sleeping and hardly eating and having a drink every now and then with the people I'm working with and just having basically the worst lifestyle that anyone could ever have and trying to do a really hard job in those hours it just felt impossible. And it got to a point where I think it would have affected my sustainability doing this job, which is a sad thought. I think it would be that way for a lot of people.
It is that way for a lot of people. They burn out for things that are preventable, I think.
Exactly it. And I think that's really sad, man. Like it's something that's so avoidable and it'd probably be better for your job, better for yourself, better for your brain, better for your body if you just sort of took control of that. And I think that's something, I feel like I wish that was something that was spoken a little bit more about in the music community, even though it's a weird one, but it's so true that it's...
We talk about it all the time on this podcast.
Oh, nice. That's awesome, man. That's sick.
Yeah, you should listen to the one I did recently with Matt Halpern from Periphery, and this comes up quite a bit.
Nice.
The one with mastering engineer Brad Blackwood also. The thing is that bad lifestyle is something that pretty much goes hand in hand with music. But I think as a producer... you could have a really bad lifestyle, but if you don't take care of that and you kind of match the lifestyle of your clients, it's gonna hurt you long term, because the difference between you and them is for them, the studio is kind of like it's like a fantasy land.
Yeah.
Not vacation because they're working, but they might go home and go to like a regular job, or if this is their job, they might go home and then sync their schedule to their wife or something like that. There's no rule that says that just because they like to stay up all night at the studio, that's what they do when they're home. I think a lot of musicians that I've known behave one way in the studio and then behave another way when they're home. But if you behave like they do in the studio for years and years and years and years and years, that shit will catch up to you for sure.
Yeah, that's the difference, isn't it? You've got to act that way for your entire working life, whereas they only have to act that way for like a month. And it's a lot easier to do it for a month.
Yes. So it's no big deal to like pull all-nighters for a month when you're 23 and then go back to your life, and then 2 years later or 1 year later do it again. It's not that big of a deal. You have to do it. You have to have a schedule that you can sustain. Yeah, day in, day out. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's such a thing that would be overlooked by young dudes, that would be they're trying to live like that and then they're stuck. Like, I can't live like this. This isn't for me. And then they're out of it. And they could have been this person filled with potential to do great things, but they're, turned away because they just feel like they can't handle it when it's not even an aspect of the job. And if you control it, you could probably do your job 5 times better. I have a couple of friends like that at least. And even...
Don't we all?
Yeah, exactly. And I think even to a point of just their productivity, which ultimately heavily affects people who are willing to work with you. If you're an unproductive person, no one's going to want to put their album in your hands, full stop. So yeah, it's definitely the health and music world go hand in hand if you're trying to do this. Absolutely.
I don't know that many people who really do have their shit together who don't figure out a way to make this work. Most people I know look, this isn't going to work out for everybody. That's a fact. But, man, I don't know that many people who I can honestly say had it together, worked really hard, stayed on top of their mental and physical health, were organized, were responsible, had a good attitude, and didn't end up making a career for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't happen. This reminds me of something that I used to notice when I was producing all the time or on tour. We would tour with these bands that are like veterans, but they weren't that big. Like, say that there's like 5 bands from a scene that was big 20 years ago, and 4 of them are like really big. And then there's other one exists still, but they like never graduated past this like lower level. But they're just as good as the bigger ones. And a lot of people will, on the outside, will say, well, they just never got the shot they needed, or, things like that. But from observing how they behave, there's always a reason. Like, you can always, once you get around those people, it like suddenly makes perfect sense why they never graduated. There's always something super dysfunctional going on in how they relate to each other or how they approach business or in their work ethic. I very rarely have seen a situation where they truly just had bad luck. There's almost always like a reason that you can trace back for why shit did not work out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or didn't advance further.
Absolutely, man. And it's the same with same in, I guess, probably every job that's ever existed, really. But I think it rings so true in something like this, where you ultimately have free reign over everything. And it's up to you to make it all work, to put the puzzle together and make the picture clear and hold it together. And
build something out of nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously I don't think that world can come together if there's chaos around it. And it seems like that's true, which is good. At least I'm onto something.
I agree that it's probably true in any job in the world, but the difference in music is that a lot of people like to fantasize about things like good luck and bad luck. They like to think about getting lucky or great things happening to them or getting screwed or all these like really dramatic things that I think in some other lines of work don't really enter into the scenario, like getting lucky as a plumber. What does that mean? Right?
It's a great sentence.
I'm not saying that like there's not plumbers who like are very successful, but it's just getting lucky is like part of the conversation about musicians. And a lot of people will believe that people who got big got lucky, or people who didn't got unlucky. And it's pretty stupid belief, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And it rings true when you look at anyone who's hit, like, not anyone, but I guess 99.9% of people who have succeeded in what they're doing, behind them is like 10 years of figuring out what to do and what not to do and perfecting what to do and implementing it and keeping it steady and persisting through all the crap that comes with what they're doing. And then eventually they make it and everyone's there like, oh, that's so lucky. And it's like, man, I just endured 10 years of bad luck just to get here.
There is one small element of luck, which is the luck that you met the right people.
Yes.
For something.
Totally.
You know, like that you there's some people that you just meet that change your life, and it's by chance a lot of the time that you guys happen to be in the same place at the same time, that person was in the right mental state to be open to you.
Yeah.
That somebody who you didn't know before knows you now and is willing to say yes. That there's some luck to that. And also your music resonating with the public.
Yeah, that's the big one.
You can't control that. But whether your music resonates or not, there's no luck involved with sustaining a career. That's if your music resonates and you make mistakes, you're going to disappear.
Yeah, man. And I think there's the counter to both of those, isn't there? Like, even with meeting people, I definitely have a few key people in my life that I've met and life changed massively after knowing them, which is awesome. And not to take any credit away from them, but on the other end, if you meet that person and you're not in a state of your life where you're ready for that opportunity, then it quickly goes from I met someone awesome and this could change my life to I met someone awesome and probably won't talk to them again, you know? There's definitely an area of sort of preparedness, whatever the nice English word for that is, that comes with turning a nice little chance into a genuine opportunity. And like you're saying, in terms of sustainability and longevity as well, that's definitely something that you can't really put down to luck. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I agree. Even when you meet that person, it's not all luck either. If you're not ready, they're not going to just bestow you with a record deal or something.
Exactly.
They're not going to just hire you to produce a band that they do A&R for just for charity. Like there's going to be a reason for why you get offered the record deal or the publishing deal or the tour or like any of that stuff. That's not luck. It's just there's the luck that when you got introduced to the person, they were open to you, or that you met the person that knows them.
Yeah,
or something.
Exactly. And then it's on you to make that luck turn into something, I guess.
Yeah, you put yourself in the right situation to have that happen in the first place.
Yeah, and you can also make yourself a luckier person by simply being like exposing yourself to those situations. You know, we would all know tons of people who are so good at what they do in this world of making music, but they just don't get into the lucky situations because they spend their whole lives sitting in a bedroom, you know? And it's like, no matter how good you are, if you're not getting out and meeting people and talking to people and having conversations and putting yourself in uncomfortable and potentially weird situations where you might get put on the spot and meet a certain person or get a certain job, you kind of can't really sit there and blame it all on luck, I don't think. If you've never left your bedroom studio but you can make a world-class sounding song, and you never went through the effort of putting music out in your own name just to get yourself out there, or going to shows to meet people, or befriending people, or just, there's a certain amount of laziness that you cannot put down to luck, isn't there?
100%.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, man. Like I said, I know a specific few people in Australia who are so much better than me at what I do, but they...
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. They can't stick it. They can't make it happen.
Man, I had these roommates at Berkeley, these two dudes that I roomed with that were maybe some of the most talented people I had met up to date then. I mean, I've met some more talented people since. It was a while ago, but up till that point, they were in the top tier. They were way better at music than me, like considerably better. They could have done anything. There was no thing that they couldn't do. They could play in any genre. They were awesome at any genre. They looked cool. They were smart. Like, they were cool. Like, all the stuff that you associate with a successful musician, but they were just fucking lazy. They were more interested in doing drugs and playing video games than pursuing anything. And they literally did nothing with that talent. And years went by and nothing happened with them. And I've known quite a few people like that. And those dudes were definitely better than me. They're better than most people. And they didn't even have like a local career. Like, nothing happened whatsoever with their music. And it's 100% their fault.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Not that I could ever say that to these people, but yeah.
No,
absolutely.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to tell these people that, and I doubt they're listening.
Reach out 20 years later trying to tell them.
And if they are listening, dudes, you fucked up.
Yeah.
You guys were good.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's a sad thought, isn't it? But it's also, I think it's a positive thing for a lot of people out there who, I certainly felt this way, where I was like, there's so many people better than me. There's no chance I'm going to be able to make it past them and get myself seen or heard or be that guy that people want to work with, when they could just go down the road and work with this other guy who's 10 times better. Yet it has happened.
It's because there's more, like you said, there's more to it than just music.
Absolutely. There's so much more to it, a whole world of things to it. I think it's really motivating. I wish someone told me that like 6 years ago. That would have been awesome. But yeah, here we are. And I think it's a really good thing. I think that's one thing I really like about just this industry as a whole. That hard work definitely pays off. It's definitely not a thing of born talent or this or that or some sort of child prodigy thing. Like, if you're not there to work and not there to hustle, and you're not a likable person, and you could be lazy, or you could be a bit of an asshole, or you could be this, or you could be that, and it'll just be a massive hurdle that you can't get over, which I think is cool. I think I like it.
Yeah, and one other thing to piggyback off that I've noticed is, you know how people say that this is a very oversaturated industry? I'm not sure I believe that. And the reason is that, yes, there are a lot of people who try to get in and who fuck around with it, but there really aren't that many people who have all those qualities that we've been talking about. Like, they are talented enough, and they are likable enough, and they do have the right work ethic, and they are mentally healthy enough, and they do put themselves out there enough, like, and they do turn things around quickly. Like, all that stuff, there's not that many people actually who have all those qualities. Which is why you end up seeing the same people doing all the work. It's because they're very rare. So really, you're not competing against the hundreds of thousands of people that have Reaper or whatever. You know, you're not competing against the ocean of bedroom producers. You're competing against a very, very, very small group of elite people, basically.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it, man. And yeah, I think exactly like you're saying, if this was, say it was 40 years ago, I think the people you're talking about who have, are checking all the boxes of a good work ethic and a good personality, and, just being a genuine, honest, likable person, hardworking, and obviously has the music skills to complement that, because they are necessary at some point. I think they would have been the people that end up in the $1 million studios with the big consoles and this and that. It's just, in this day and age, you can get away with not having some of that, which is quite nice. But I don't think it's massively oversaturated, like you're saying, with, the hundreds of thousands of people with a MacBook Air and a Focusrite 2i2. I don't really see that as a thing, just because it's not who you're, quote unquote, competing against. Exactly as you said.
Yeah. If you have those qualities, you're in a completely different category.
Absolutely, man. And if anything, I actually think it's kind of awesome, just because now bands can bring in pre-pro, which is so sick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And thanks to the whole wondrous thing of technology, and kind of like we were saying at the very start of this, I've been making albums with people on the other side of the world while there's a pandemic and it's illegal to leave our houses. So, thank you, internet. It's sick.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying this podcast, then you should know that it's brought to you by URM Academy. URM Academy's mission is to create the next generation of audio professionals by giving them the inspiration and information to hone their craft and build a career doing what they love. You've probably heard me talk about Nail the Mix before, and if you're a member, you already know how amazing it is. At the beginning of the month, Nail the Mix members get the raw multi-tracks to a new song by artists like Lamb of God, Angels and Airwaves, Knock Loose, Opeth, Meshuggah, Bring Me the Horizon, Gojira, Asking Alexandria, Machine Head, and Papa Roach, among many, many others. Over 60 at this point. Then at the end of the month, the producer who mixed it comes on and does a live streaming walkthrough of exactly how they mix the song on the album and takes your questions live on air. And these are guys like TLA, Will Putney, Jens Bogren, Dan Lancaster, Tui Madsen, Andrew Wade, and many, many more. You'll also get access to MixLab, which is our collection of dozens of bite-sized mixing tutorials that cover all the basics, as well as Portfolio Builder, which is a library of pro-quality multi-tracks cleared for use in your portfolio, so your career will never again be held back by the quality of your source material. And for those of you who really want to step up their game, we have another membership tier called URM Enhance, which includes everything I already told you about and access to our massive library of fast tracks, which are deep, super detailed courses on intermediate and advanced topics like gain staging, mastering, low end, and so forth. It's over 500 hours of content, and man, let me tell you, this stuff is just insanely detailed. Enhanced members also get access to one-on-ones, which are basically office hour sessions with us, and Mix Rescue, which is where we open up one of your mixes and fix it up and talk you through exactly what we're doing at every step. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, if you're ready to level up your mixing skills in your audio career, head over to urm.academy to find out more.
So I think you've got an interesting perspective due to your age, because you grew up in the modern age. So, like, for instance, my generation has seen both. Like, when we grew up, there was none of this shit, but we were young enough when it switched over to be able to fully adapt. One generation up from me have a really hard time with it because they were a little bit older when it switched over to where they were already kind of set in their ways. It all happened when I was like a teenager or whatever. So it was pretty easy to, or early 20s, something like that. It was easy to make the shift. But I've always thought that the people who are born into it have the biggest advantage.
Absolutely.
Like, I think it's cool to have the perspective of having known what the world was like before. Like, it's a cool thing that my generation understands because the world was very different. But I actually think that the 25 and under generation who grew up in this shit have an incredible advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess it's like anything. If you were, if up until recently we were all born walking on our hands, and then after 30 years of walking on your hands, suddenly everyone started walking on their feet, it's going to be a little bit harder for those people that have been walking on their hands for like 30 or 40 years. Whereas if you're just born into it, it's kind of just all it's natural and it's good.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you even consider like big old school studios? It sounds like you grew up with like an interface, Logic. Like you grew up, like when you were a kid, you were shown this modern way of doing things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's kind of interesting. Until really recently, everyone has like their dream studio in their head. And my dream studio has never involved like a console or tape, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but yeah, it's never involved either of those two things. It's always just been really, really good conversion, really sick preamps, and that's kind of it. And then like a nice aesthetic setup with a big screen that I'm looking at right now that you can't see. That's
just a controller?
This one here?
Yeah.
This is an Audient ASP 4816. It's actually really sick, but that's what I was getting to. So I moved into a new studio really recently, and it came with this, and this is kind of like the most old school thing I've ever worked with just because it's a console. And I never really imagined working through one of those, but it's kind of sick. But yeah, even now to answer your question, like it is kind of interesting being brought into that, born into that era, because I never imagined myself working like this. And it's so weird to get used to it. I feel like I'm going back in time, like going the opposite way.
You are.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's kind of sick. It's kind of cool.
So lots of the dudes who came up on that have had a hard time adapting to digital stuff. It's interesting to hear you kind of have the opposite thing where
It's so hard.
yeah, because it's a whole different way of imagining and envisioning audio.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so many funny things. Like the owner comes in now and then, especially when we're doing drums, just to sort of oversee things because it's like a new drum room for me. Everything's unfamiliar, new console. And he sees me, we go to start tracking drums and I'm like, sweet, let's dial in some nice sounds. And I pull up like some sort of SSL channel and he's just there like, you have things to work with in front of you. You don't need to go for like the plugins instantly, try and do some fun stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of weird. Like I'm not really used to trying to do this stuff. But it's very cool. It's very cool. I'm liking it.
What are you liking about it? Like, I want to hear more about your perspective on starting to use older shit because it's interesting.
It's half and half. Like it's going to sound so dumb, but there is just a feel good thing about sitting in front of this console and working on music. Like it's,
well, yeah.
It's. I always say it sounds.
I think that's half the reason people like gear. Is it makes them feel cool.
Yeah. Well, if I'm honest, I don't really notice an obvious sonic difference. I feel like I might, but it could also be placebo effect just because I'm sitting in front of this and I'm like that sounds great, but realistically it would probably sound very similar, if not identical, without this thing in the picture. But it is kind of sick. You know, it's cool watching meters go off. It's cool doing this. It's cool EQing on the way in through it. But I think most of it, I don't want to come off as, vain, but I think most of the good thing about it is a feel-good thing.
I agree. And we've done lots of side-by-side ABs on Nail the Mix. Actually, we did one when we were in Australia with Forrester Savell.
Oh, legend.
Yeah, he's a legend for sure. Mm. We did Carnival with him, and we did it in an SSL room with a bunch of outboard. He barely used any plugins on his Nail the Mix, and we finished early. We had time, and so we were just like, you know what? Why don't we just shoot out this gear against the plug-in versions?
That's awesome.
They had the UAD versions of every unit that they had.
Nice.
And so the objective was, let's see if we can get it or he sees if he can get it sounding identical. And the trick was not to put the knobs in the same place.
Yeah.
Just use your ear, but try to get it to sound identical. And mission was accomplished. Like if you see that one, they do sound identical. Like I said, the only difference is if you put the knobs in the same place, they're going to sound different. If you just ignore what it looks like and go by sound, you won't be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if I had an SSL console and an SSL plugin, I'm sure if I boosted 6 dB of 1K or something, off the top of my head on both things, it's probably not going to sound, exactly the same. So it doesn't surprise me. But that is nice to know that you can do the exact same thing. I'm pretty much entirely in the box. I run like an option of 2 preamps on the way in, pretty much, and that's about it. Nice and simple, and then everything's a fun challenge digitally. I'd ultimately like to get more equipment someday, but I genuinely think it's a cool challenge to just track everything. I've kind of stolen this from Taylor Larson, by the way, disclaimer. But I think it's a cool...
He's great.
Oh, he's brilliant, man. One of my favorites. But I think it's a really cool challenge to just do as he says and track everything as clean and crystal clear as you can, and then work in the box, because it's 2020 and plugins are incredible. And if you don't have access to outboard gear, it's not an excuse to not have access to a good mix. The only problem is you not being able to do it. Sounded harsher than I intended, but
it's okay.
It's true, though.
It's harsh.
Yeah, it's very true, man. And it's so easy to be like, if I had an 1176 and a Sony C800G, I could have the best vocal sound in the world. But you won't. Exactly. If you don't know what you're doing first and foremost, your stuff's always going to suck. The problem probably starts with you.
Probably.
I feel bad saying definitely. The problem absolutely starts with you.
Yeah, it does. That's why great producers and great mixers can do something on all stock plugins, and it still sounds fucking incredible.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen that at some point. I've seen it happen. and I've heard of it happening, and I know it's real. If you take a great mixer, strip away all the fancy gear, just give them the most basic stock shit, their mix will still sound amazing because they are amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that's what gives me confidence. Like, it's a common thing where people are like, what plugins did you use on this? What settings were you using?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I will happily tell people because it probably leads them further off the trail than, some friendly advice would have just saying it doesn't matter.
Well, so this is an interesting thing philosophically for me because of what URM does. And it comes up with some people who are resistant to come on. Like, they feel weird about, quote unquote, giving out their secrets. And
yeah, okay.
My argument always and forever, and I really do mean it, is you're not giving away any secrets because you can't give your brain away. So it doesn't matter if people learn what settings you used on something. They still aren't in your head. So they don't understand the nuance. They can't hear the nuance the way you hear it, and they can't make decisions the way you do because
Absolutely.
They're not you. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Giving away the secret of what you did in one
scenario.
One scenario of probably thousands. Like, it's not,
and it's not even the full thing.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of instinct involved and tastes involved and decisions that you make because you have certain tendencies and your tastes pull you somewhere that you can't really explain that to people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a large amount of just skill and intuition that makes you, and I think that's awesome. And it's sometimes even really annoying. Like, a good example is the Slaves album. We were using DI guitars, and there'd be songs where we'd have DI guitars for one song and another song, same guitar. Everything is exactly the same, but my damn guitar mix was not good in the second song, but it's good in the first. It's like context is everything as well. Like, giving away that secret for that one guitar probably is never, ever, ever going to work again. It's an interesting concept. And I'm sure some people do have some mind-boggling secrets that maybe I'm just yet to discover and maybe will.
I mean, yes, there are a few. I mean, obviously, there's great techniques, right? So
yeah.
There's some stuff that understandably some people do want to hang on to. But in my opinion, that stuff is like the exception. Like if they do a nail the mix and we do an 8-hour session and they do like the whole thing, maybe sometimes there will be one final thing in the mastering stage they don't want to share. Fair enough.
Yeah, that's fine.
You already shared everything else. Like, whatever.
Exactly.
If you want to hang on to that, hang on to that. And there's been some things that people have dropped, like when Bo Rochelle dropped the snare gating or the bleed trick, like that spread like wildfire.
I watched that one, actually. That was awesome. Yeah. That was really cool.
That trick, you know the one I'm talking about then?
Yeah, I do remember that. And he does that. It's more of a common thing, but he does that reverse reverb thing, which is still so sick. Just because that song is so good. It was the Silver String, right?
Yes.
Yeah, such a good song, man. So awesome.
And great vocalist. I love Anthony.
Yeah,
Green.
Great everything. And almost frustratingly great because you start wishing that you were involved in some capacity, but you weren't. So you just have to watch.
It might be one day.
Yeah, maybe one day.
Maybe one day. But yeah, that gating trick, a bunch of pros started using it. You started seeing it on Nail the Mix more and more and more. And they all credited from his Nail the Mix or another Nail the Mix where somebody watched it and picked it up from that. And then now it's something that's common in the vocabulary with all the students too, where nobody was doing it before. So yes, there are some techniques that just do make a big difference, so much so that like it becomes part of how people work. But still, knowing how to gate something or strip the bleed out isn't going to make you a great mixer. It's just teaching you how to solve one problem. That's it. And
I think that's so sick. And if someone, if there was advice floating around that had my name attached to it and it was like this trick that Jimmy does frequently, I would be stoked. I think that's awesome, man. That's not a bad thing. That's so cool.
Yeah, if you could influence like a generation of mixers
Exactly, that whole...
and a bunch of pros,
Yeah,
why not?
everyone's snare sounds sick now, thanks to me. I'd be like, you're welcome, guys. I'm like the godfather of snares now. This is nice.
I mean, I like how you think about it. It's not, I don't see what the problem is.
And if I did give away, say if that was me and I gave away that snare trick and suddenly there was some guy who I was not related to in any capacity and suddenly he was stealing all my potential records, power to him. That would be kind of impressive. You almost deserve it at that point. If you got one trick and now you're taking all my work, like, nice.
I mean, if he got one trick and he's taking all your work,
he'd have to be incredible.
There's a lot more going on than that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I'd be like, well, not bad. Well played.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's again, nobody's going to get work due to charity or just because. There's always a reason for it. So if somebody comes along and starts mopping up everybody's bands or artists, that one trick you gave them isn't the reason. They would have done it with or without.
But if it was the reason, it just wouldn't be. It can't be. Imagine every band in the scene is thinking I'd work with him. If he gated his snares like Bo, I would do it.
Yeah,
but I can't.
Since he doesn't, we won't.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wait, he learned. Now we'll go with him.
Yeah, I mean, you should try it. Get your snares like Bo.
I'll do it, and then I'll come for all his clients.
When you talk about it like this, it really does make it sound ridiculous.
It does, absolutely, yeah. I don't think there's... Well, I haven't been doing it for as long as a lot of people, so maybe it's unfair to say, but there's definitely not one thing in my work that defines the sound and the selling point, that's for sure. I feel like, if anything, actually, in the songwriting capacity that we were talking about earlier, I feel like I wouldn't be scared of it, but I feel like that'd be the biggest giveaway, seeing exactly how I've arranged these sessions, how I've arranged these backing vocals, the layers that I've gone for. And yeah, what I do to fill gaps, what I do with atmosphere, what I do on impacts. Like, I feel like that the composition is almost, in my work, would be the biggest giveaway. But again, if someone's like, hey, I'm going to do that thing that Jimmy did on that record, I'd be like, nice, dude. Let me know how it goes. That's sweet. That's awesome.
I mean, they're still not going to... You could teach them all the techniques, but they're still not going to write what you wrote.
Exactly. And realistically... everything that and I'm guessing most people do, no matter how good they are, is probably somewhat common knowledge by now. It's just they know how to execute it flawlessly.
Yes, there's an element of that for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if there's that many tricks that would be just completely groundbreaking. And it's like, this is going to change the production world forever. No one's ever heard of this, let alone done it that way. But yeah, I think most of it would just be, I execute this really well. Here's how I do it.
Which is very valuable, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's nothing like learning from somebody that's better than you, I think.
Yeah, totally, man. Well, I think, funnily enough, if I look back on my history, probably the biggest periods of growth I've gone through are after working with people in my own band. Like, if I think back to sort of day one, before I really knew what I was doing, and I did my first song with my first band, I was like, this guy's like the real deal. He was working out of his bedroom at the time. He's awesome now. He's actually doing really well. But he was working out of his bedroom at the time, and I was like, this guy's like the real deal. His stuff sounds so sick. I'm going to learn how to do this. And
You could just tell he had it going on even before he had a career.
Yeah, and I was like 17 as well, so I was a bit easily impressed. But I was like, this is sick.
Well, he was sick relative to your level.
Absolutely. That's the perfect way to put it. Yeah, and then, when I was, I think 18 or 19, I did like my first sort of real studio thing at a place called Electric Sun in Sydney with a guy named Dave Petrovic. He's done awesome things like Tonight Alive. He's like the mastermind behind them. And like Northlane, one of their albums from a while ago. But yeah, he's awesome. And we worked with him, and that was like a big turning point for me. He was using Reaper as well. So I was like, Reaper's sick. Reaper's the way to go. And he just made it seem so, he had this really logical approach to music. And I was like, it seems so easy the way he puts it all together and makes it sound good. So I went home again and had this sort of just avalanche of ideas come to my head of how I can get into producing and use the plugins he was using and do this and do that. And then same deal, a few years later, I was in a new band and we started touring internationally, and I got to see what some cool musicians do. But the big one was Taylor, working with Taylor Larson and seeing how he works. And he just had this unique approach. And
He's brilliant.
Oh, he's annoyingly good, man. I can't stand it. My band did two records with him. And then following that, this year, we've started just using me to produce, mix, and master. And it is the most daunting thing, man, that someone's going through our Spotify and like listening to song after song after song, and it all sounds brilliant. And then something by me comes on, and there's this thought in my head that's like, just this drastic drop in quality and expertise in the music. But I'm hoping that it's not audible, at least to the consumer, you know.
It's just in your head.
Yeah, hopefully. And maybe a couple of, maybe there's other mix engineers out there that are like, this sounds like, a subpar Taylor mix.
Well, thankfully, the style of music you make actually has fans.
Yeah. That's good, yeah.
Not just engineers.
Exactly, yeah. We're trying to impress people that don't play music, which is, I think, a really good thing. But, I think, again, I've digressed so far that I forgot what the point was.
You're talking about learning from people.
Yeah, my biggest growth periods have been from, like, right after I've worked with someone new and seen how they approach things and how they tackle things. And what was cool about Taylor, a big one, was how digital his whole process was. Like how massive and analog it sounds, but how digital his approach was. And that was just the coolest thing, man. I was like, suddenly this whole world of great sounding music is way more possible. And that was awesome. And yeah, I guess that's what brings in the credibility of Nail the Mix as well. Like it's exactly that, but more in depth, which is awesome. And with so many different people.
Yeah, it's something that I couldn't even imagine when I was learning how to do it. Couldn't even fathom something like that existing. Would have killed for it.
It's incredible, man. Sadly, I haven't really delved too far into it. There's a few that I've watched. Bo's one being one, and Taylor's one being one.
I'll hook you up if you want access.
That would be awesome, man. I'd love that. It's one of those things. Like every time it comes up, I'm like, I need to watch that. I'm a huge fan of this guy. I'd love to see, be a fly on the wall and see how he works. And I'm like, I'll do that.
Honestly, you're not really the target market.
Yeah.
I have this conversation pretty often on the podcast where lots of times people will actually feel bad that they haven't really watched it. And it's like, dude, you're not, of course you didn't watch it. You're busy making records.
Exactly. Well, that's it. I'm always like, I genuinely could benefit from this. I'll do it on my next day off. And then that next day off either doesn't come, or when it comes, I'm like, the last thing I want to do right now is think about audio.
Of course.
Like, I want silence and I want a clear head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things, man. It's hard to get to.
Man, that's why when URM students get to that point, they leave because they got too busy. That's like the best thing.
Absolutely. Well, I guess it's what you're trying to do.
That's what should happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be, a bit sad if that was the goal, to be watching and competing and Nailed the Mix until you're 80 and you're never busy, and that's the end of your career.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's obviously I don't want to lose customers, but if there was ever the right reason, that's the right reason. That's what I want for them.
That's an interesting conversation point, I reckon, is being so good at your job that you're going to lose customers. You ever think about that?
I have thought about it and went forward anyways. There's all kinds of fears like that.
Yeah.
Put yourself out of a job, or what if we run out of bands, or blah, blah, blah. But I felt that way years ago and still here.
Nice. Vote of confidence. But I feel like that comes up relatively frequently. And I think it's kind of not accurate. I'm saying kind of not accurate, but I think it's so backwards. Like, if anything, all it's doing is just bringing like the ultimate credibility to your work and what you do. And if people come in and they work with you for a little bit, or they're paying or subscribing to you and they succeed and they're like, sweet, I don't actually need you anymore. Surely that's going to brew, like, even if you were being strictly business and financial with it, surely that's just going to bring like 15 more people that heard of their story and directed them your way. I don't really believe that it could ever be a thing of like, I don't want to lose this customer because I've taught them so well. I need to keep like milking them for as long as I can because they're like my only one. It's a really poor business model.
Yeah, want there to be a turnover in the community. And to me, if there's people I don't know in it, we've done a good job. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole like lot of people that I don't recognize in there right now. I think it's the same with production. A lot of people do get worried about other people taking their work. In my opinion, poaching happens, of course, but it's not if you're good and people love what you do, you shouldn't worry about it.
Totally. Like you said, they don't have your brain. I think that's the biggest thing. That they could be able to make a great sounding record, but they aren't you. And that's a really good thing for you and for them. Like, it's not a bad thing for them that they can't be you. They can be themselves and do their own thing. And that's another thing. You'll obviously be able to tell that I kind of worship Taylor for this, but he's always talking about that. It's about having your own sound and being your own thing. People are
Which
always,
he certainly does.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. You hear his work and you know it's his instantly. And it's a good thing. It's awesome. And I think that's one of the most positive things to sort of learn and get adjusted to, is that you're not that person, and that's a really good thing for you, which is kind of hard to imagine, but it's good. It helps.
Yeah, and I mean, say you lose a project to somebody else, it's not that big of a deal, in my opinion.
It's going to happen again.
There's more projects. It's going to happen, and it's in the life cycle of the relationship of a producer and an artist, or a mixer and an artist, that at some point, generally the artist is going to want to try something different. I mean, yeah, sometimes there's situations where an artist and a producer stick together for every album. It happens. But I think that's pretty rare. I think at some point, the artist will feel like they've kind of exhausted the relationship, which is fine.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I actually have had this conversation quite a bit with people, and I'm always like, if you do come back, like, sweet, that's so awesome. I'm excited to work with you. If you don't, just go to someone who's good. I'm like, the only reason I would be offended is if you go to someone and I'm like, oh, this person's not good. You just made the wrong choice. Even if you want to involve me in finding an option that is not me, I'll help. That's cool. Just know who to avoid and who to trust. It's a good thing.
How did you get your ego out of the way?
It's a hard thing. Well, again, that's something I've gone through this year. I lost a couple of jobs throughout the whole year, which it's hard to look at this way, but that's a good number. Like, that's okay. Considering the amount of jobs that have worked out and done well, losing 2 is not bad. No. And it's a really hard thing to not let your ego get in the way. And I feel like the key thing is to not lose that cool of yours, which is really hard. It's like the biggest challenge I think I've ever faced.
To not lose what?
To not lose your cool, to not let your ego get in the way, and to not get stung too hard, and to be good throughout it, because it will always pay off. And surely everyone, myself included, has lost that sense of cool and been like, okay, get out of here, you're on your own, like, go, good luck out in the world. But I think it's proven. I've had clients before where they're like, oh, we're going to go elsewhere. And I'm like, sweet, where? Like, who are you going to? And we have a good chat about it. And I'm like, if it's someone great, I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I know that person's work, they're sick. You're going to love that. And I think maybe what keeps my ego out of the way, I don't really know. I've never really thought about it like that. But I guess it would probably just be that I have other work to look forward to, and that's a good thing. And maybe I look forward to hearing their work with said person who I think is going to do an awesome job, and I'm excited for them and excited for that. Again, I've never really thought about it, and that sounds like I'm just trying to be like, great dude, Jimmy, but just a stab in the dark. I'm guessing that's what was going through my head.
Like, I remember a band went to Putney after me, and I was like, cool. It's going to be great.
Exactly, man. If someone went to Putney after me, I'd be like, damn, you're in the big leagues now. Have fun, man. That's sick. Congratulations.
How can you blame them,
Exactly. But if someone works with me and then he's like, our friend, he started recording bands and we're going to do it through him, and I have to be that guy that's like, it's your choice to make, but trust me, just come and do it with me. Like, I'll look after you. We'll do whatever we need to do to make it work, but the direction you're heading is full of sadness. That's not a good one.
Well, yeah, that's just looking out for them.
Yeah, it's exactly, yeah.
Because that never turns out well. I've definitely encountered that scenario. But usually it's not because they're sick of the producer. Usually when they leave a good producer to go to their friend, they're trying to save money.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, sorry, this just entered my head, but I guess probably the main thing that would make me not feel, a massive hit to the ego if someone goes elsewhere from me is probably the fact that I've done that to producers too, and that there was never a bit of ill intent in my mind at that person to do that.
No, you just wanted something else.
Yeah, and there's so many reasons it could be, but the reason has never been something remotely close to I don't want to work with that person again. It's not been that ever.
I've only had that once.
Really?
Yeah.
How did it feel?
Well, this person was extremely fucked up.
Oh, okay.
Like a very verbally abusive,
Damn.
Inefficient, like super slow, subpar experience. And so, yeah, my whole band was like, never work with this fucker again. But that's the only time I've ever felt that way. The other times, it's just been like, I want to work with someone else.
Exactly. I just want to, I think this person could do a good job, or I'm excited about this, or I want to explore this. And it's the same in reverse. Like, again, I think that's where the key is to not lose your cool, because there's probably not any, bad blood there. They probably just want to go and explore something else, and that's fine. I think equally to saying that, though, that's a good point, because I've had a couple of clients who are like that in the last 12 months. I say a couple, and I think it's probably just been one that is bordering on verbally abusive, like just so condescending, so rude. And at a certain point, I hit a wall where I'm like, okay, and I try and keep my cool, and I'm like, we can't work together. This is not me. It's not anything, about the music. It's just we personally are not a good match. And I think that's also something that should be recognized as fine. It's not an easy conversation to have by any means, but music is a personal thing. And if you're clashing, it's not going to work. It's going to be hell for both of you. Like, I'm saving this person the hassle of trying to deal with me, plus me dealing with them.
You just reminded me of a nightmare client I had in like 2005.
Yep.
There was this girl, she had a black metal band, and she was in the Atlanta scene. I'm from Atlanta. She was like, I knew her since high school, and she always kind of sucked. She was always trying to like have bands, and like she was a very, very rough person, like very angry, quick to freak out, not good at music, like just kind of
whole
a
package.
whole package. Yeah, rough human being. But I hadn't seen her in years. Like, I had done some like well-known underground death metal bands, and so she wanted to record with me. And like, when you haven't seen someone in years, you kind of, unless they did something so horrific, you kind of don't remember. You don't even really remember. So I didn't even think about it. So I took a down payment and started working on the schedule. And right then and there, it started getting bad. So I was like, I'd like to take 6 to 8 hours to get drum sounds. We'll try to track 3 songs on day 2, 3 songs on day 3. And I had the whole thing laid out. And I got this email back that was like, anybody that takes longer than 2 hours to get drum sounds is a scammer, and you're scamming us. That's how we started. And then, it's just fighting me on everything. And we made it to drums. She brought in this session drummer guy, and he kept calling me Monkey Boy. And he kept on like I would say like, do that again. He's like, okay, Monkey Boy, or he'd be like, play that back, Monkey Boy. He would just keep saying that, and that lasted 1 hour before I kicked them. Like,
great choice.
I lasted 1 hour into the session, and then I kicked them out.
Wow, man. Damn.
Deleted their shit.
Good choice. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? You just
couldn't handle it.
It's the earlier you do it, the better. 100%. Like,
dude, it felt so good.
Oh, totally. And
yeah, because when she started sending me the fucked up emails, like, you're a scammer and blah blah blah, I know how this is done. It's like, maybe she's in a bad mood.
Yeah, having a real bad day, worst day of her life.
Yeah, like maybe her dog got hit by a car. Who knows? Like, maybe
she just got scammed.
Yeah, but she was being like that too when we started, and she brought her soulmate, obviously, that drummer. So it was just like, no. If this is how it started, fuck going any further with this. Like,
Monkey
no
Boy.
way.
Why is that so
Monkey
offensive? That's weird.
Just imagine someone that you're trying to work with. You're trying to like make them sound good and have a rapport and work with them, and they're just like constantly insulting you.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would you do it?
I don't think I'd last much longer than an hour either. They'd have to go. Like, that's the learning curve, isn't it? Though so I feel like if I was a little younger and had a little less work, there's not really a line that can be crossed, because I was always like, well, it's good. I've got time I can fill, and there's payments I can take, and life is good. Like I'm working, I'm booked, and that's the ultimate goal. But I feel like you quickly learn after an experience or two like that there is not really an amount of time or money that's realistic that is going to cover just the mental toll of working with someone like that. Working with someone where you clash that badly, it just can't be done. There's not a way to make it work.
You have to have boundaries and self-respect, and it kind of, where's your self-respect if you're willing to let someone treat you like that?
Yeah, that's the way to put it. That's perfect.
You were telling me that, so you were having an issue with a client that was being kind of like that towards you?
Yeah, just sort of pretty, it's just the usual. Nothing awful, but just in general condescending. Pretty much just tells you everything about how your job should be done and how you're not doing it right and how it needs to be done. Obviously, this person has only ever recorded with me, so they have no experience to base that off. But it just...
In a mean way or just a know-it-all?
Both.
Oh, the best combination, a mean know-it-all.
Yeah. I guess more so from a know-it-all point, but it got to a point where I was like, I genuinely think this person is like a bit delusional. Like, it gets so far from a point of sense that it's kind of like, this can't be normal. Like, this can't be a healthy mind acting like this. And it just got to a point where I was like, this was the civil conversation, actually. It was really awesome. And I basically laid it all out nice and stern, but as polite as I could, and was like, this is not working. We are not a good fit for each other. And that's fine. Like, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, it's going to mean a bit of a time delay for you if you're in a rush, because we're going to have to find someone else. But if you like, I'll help you. We'll find someone who's more suited to you, and that'll be that. Like, we'll make it work. And all was well. And this was after making a record. And then this was after making a record during mixing. And then obviously that person takes off. I send them all multi-tracks.
How did they react?
Pretty well, from memory. This is going back a
little while. So they probably agreed.
Yeah, totally. I think it's hard not to. If they're that unhappy that they're insulting to you, and then you approach them calmly with...
In the situation I told you about, she did not react well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think she's crazy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it sounds to me like in your situation, you guys were just not a good fit, but it's not like he was evil or something.
Yeah, no, they weren't the worst person in the world.
Yeah.
That's for sure. It was just their working style and approach and speaking style, like communication style, did not sit well with me. And it was like constantly offensive without being like, name calling or this or that. It wasn't directly offensive, but it was just constantly, offensive and condescending and just the worst job ever. So I was like, this isn't worth it. That was the first time ever that I'd got to the point where I was like, this isn't worth it. Getting the payment isn't worth it. Having my name on this project isn't worth it. It's not working for me. So yeah, approached them with that whole thing, and of course sent them off with multi-tracks, and all was well. And multi-tracks in Pro Tools for an album takes a while, so that took a long time, and I was like, it's fine, I'll take care of that for you, and I'll prepare it all for you. Everything's neat, everything's edited. Here's everything you need. And then naturally 1 month later, they're back being like, I really liked working with you. I really love your work. Please, can we finish the album together? And I had to be that guy that was like, no, I can't do it. But of course, it's always what happens. They're so unhappy until they don't have you to sort of carry all their ideas and make their stupid ideas work. And they realize that you haven't been the devil after all, and that you've actually been really easy to work with. And you have to be that guy that's like, sorry, I can't do it.
It's I completely agree that when you're parting ways with somebody, Whether they initiate or you initiate, you should be classy and professional about it. Because, okay, so in this scenario where you're the one who parted ways, yeah, sure, you don't want them to come back. That's why you got rid of them in the first place. However, sometimes when it's flipped around, say the band leaves, who's to say they're not coming back on the next record? That happens all the time, that bands go to someone else and realize they actually prefer the original person they were working with.
Totally.
That happens every day.
Yeah.
That's a normal scenario. However, if they go to someone else and you're a bitch about it and make it dramatic and make it weird, you're sealing your own fate right there. They're not going to come back.
And the thing, like, one of my biggest fears, weirdly enough, is just people circulating that I suck to work with, that I'm an unpleasant person. I feel like that for some reason scares me more than people thinking I'm not good at my job, is that I'm a genuinely bad person.
That's like the quickest way to sink your own ship is to have that reputation.
Exactly. And sometimes it's hard. Like, there was this one instance this year where it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I wasn't terrible, but I lost my cool a little bit. And to this day, I'm like, damn, Jimmy, like, you really didn't handle that well. It wasn't that bad, but it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't classy and controlled. I gave in to the temptation of sarcasm and dryness, but it's the learning experience as well.
Sometimes it gets the best of us.
Yeah, exactly, man. You're human, and it happens, and it's kind of a very isolated incident, which I'm proud to say. But yeah, and it's good though, because I feel like after doing that, now I'm like, it wasn't even bad, but it leaves such a sour taste in my mouth, and the sour taste is from myself. So I'm like, I can't behave like that ever again. You know, that's a line that cannot be crossed, and it's good to learn that. It's a good sort of boundary to know and to cross and then to set for yourself, I think.
So this person I told you about that my band never wanted to work with again, like, he was pretty good. Wasn't like top tier, but I'd say in metal, what's the grading system like in Australia? Do you guys get B's and A's and C's and D? Okay.
Yeah.
I'd call him a solid B.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe a B minus or something.
Maybe B was generous.
No, well, it depends. It varied. It fluctuated between B and B minus. But still,
that's pretty good.
Is still good. Not the best, still good. Good enough to have a career for sure. There are plenty of like one tier under top bands who he was perfect for.
Nice.
And I'm not saying this in a condescending way at all. Like,
oh no, that's a compliment. If someone said that about me, I'd be saying thank you.
Yeah, like not everybody can be CLA or whatever. So,
exactly.
Or Andy Sneap or whatnot like that. So this guy was set up to have a real career, and he fucked around with us, and then the same story started happening with a bunch of other bands, like verbally abusive, taking forever to get shit done, like inconsistent mixes. Some are good, some are bad. Like, it's just the same story over and over and over. And like, I watched him sink his own career, and it was that reputation thing. Like that word about him just started to spread you hear musicians that you didn't even know knew him just talk about it, and then like some A&R guy at some other label brings it up, and then nobody works with that person anymore.
Totally, yeah. And then a band, like you're saying, goes to their label and is like, we want this amount of money because we want to work with this person, and the label's like, sorry, we don't work with him. Yeah. Yeah,
we don't want to waste our money on a record we're never going to get.
Exactly. And that thought is so scary, man. Like, to me, that, you know, the thought of someone going to their friend and being like, hey, you know that Jimmy guy you worked with, how was he? And they say, honestly, like...
Sucked.
Yeah. Well, if they were like, honestly, like, you know, the music sort of lacked a little, it wasn't what we were hoping for, or like, we weren't so stoked on the mix, but as a dude, he was great. Like, everything was punctual, the studio experience was fun, it was awesome. And he did everything he could. He's like, it's just what we left with wasn't really what we wanted. I don't really mind that. Obviously, I'm not like, yay, that's great, because it's not great. But that to me isn't that bad. But if someone was like, dude, that record you did sounds so sick. What was it like working with Jimmy? And they were like, avoid him at all costs. Like, do not go there. Yeah, the music's good, but it's not worth it. I'm terrified of being that guy.
I know a multi-platinum producer. It's kind of on the older side. Done some very big stuff that has that reputation for just, it's not worth the psychological toll to work with him, and bands don't go back. He's had some big hits, so bands go to him for the first time, not realizing what they're getting themselves into, or thinking that they're somehow immune. They've heard the stories, but they think that it's not going to apply to them. And then they go and they're traumatized and almost break up, and their relationship with each other gets like permanently fucked up because this dude's a major manipulator that really, really fucks with bands' heads, and they don't go back. So again, he only has a career because some of the stuff he did was successful, but not because of repeat shit. So sometimes I think you can get big enough to where you can overcome a bad reputation to a degree.
Yeah, it'll still affect you, but you can keep working.
It still affects you though, because he's not as big as he should be. He's great. He should definitely be bigger. But bands don't go back because working with him is a fucking traumatic experience.
Yeah, damn it. See, this is where I wish this wasn't a podcast and this was just a conversation, so I could be like, dude, who?
I'll tell you after.
Yeah, nice, sweet. That's great.
Yeah, I'll tell you after.
But yeah,
I'm sure that some people know who I'm talking about because they've worked with him. But man, having a good reputation is everything, in my opinion.
I agree.
I almost feel like the music side should be a given, right?
Yeah.
Like it should be a given that you know what you're doing.
Totally. Well, yeah, if I approach someone or if someone approached me about doing a record, I'm sure it would be more to establish a communication and see how we gel together more than, how can I tell them what I can do musically? They just have to go off previous work or go off good faith. But I can have a conversation with them and they can judge my character, which is fine. And totally, I think it should just be expected that you're good at your job and your job will suffice.
I mean, they're probably not going to talk to you in the first place it's like, why would they talk to you if the music side wasn't there?
Yeah, but right? No one's going to reach out like, hey, you kind of suck, but we're still tempted. Like, can you convince us?
No, it doesn't work that way.
Not going to happen. It's true. That's a really good point.
So in my opinion, like I said, I just think that should be the given. But I do agree that 90% is good, but 100% cool is way better than like not that cool, but like 10% better.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Every time I think that equation works out better. And even if it doesn't for work, like I would rather, if someone came up to you and was like, hey man, you should put Jimmy Alexander on this podcast. And you were like, nah, I hate that guy. I'd be so upset. But if you were like, oh, no, his work just doesn't really cut it, all the best to him though, I would be far less sad by that response. And that goes for anyone on this earth. If they were saying that about me, it's fine until I'm disliked as a person, disliked by my character. That sucks.
Like, is that because you know how this business works? Or it's just like a genuine, like, human thing, like you just don't want to be disliked?
I think it's a personal thing. Like, I'm not obsessed with being, man, I feel like Michael Scott off The Office trying to say this sentence because it's really close to something.
I've never seen The Office.
Oh, no way, man. That's sad. You got to get on it.
Well, I mean, I've watched it and been like, why am I watching
that
this?
face says it all. I feel that way sometimes too, but I love it.
I just can't relate.
But yeah, it's not like necessarily a thing where I need to be liked by people. It's just I don't want to be disliked. I don't know why. Like I take that as an important thing. If people are neutral, that's totally cool. But if someone has something negative to say about me, it keeps me up at night. It affects me for some reason. But maybe that's a good thing.
Probably a good thing to some degree because it is survival.
Yeah, it's definitely not a compulsive thing where, I heard one person doesn't like me, so it's my active mission to reach out to them and sort it out and tell them I'm a good guy or something. But it's a very, an unpleasant thing to me. If someone feels negatively about me for whatever reason, especially if it's true, I'm like, damn, I judge myself off that.
I understand. I've kind of accepted being controversial.
Nice.
I wasn't cool with it for a long time, but something happened in the past few years where I just, I came to a peaceful place about the idea that some people are going to fucking hate me for what I do. And there's no way out of that because they're going to fundamentally disagree with everything I'm about. Because there's some people who don't believe that. Some people believe that what we're doing is actually immoral.
Yeah, okay. So that makes sense actually. Now that you put it like that.
They do believe we're taking jobs away from people and that we are giving the secrets away and that we are scamming people or whatever. And they really do believe it. So if they really do believe it, there's nothing I can really do to change that. And it is what it is. So there are going to be some people in life that just don't like you or just don't agree with what you stand for. And what are you going to do? Such is life.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think mostly, now that you put it that way, because I think about that and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't bother me too much. I think it's mostly like we were saying, if what they were saying was true. Like if they were like, I hate this dude because of when he did this, that's the kind of thing where I'd be driving along and I'd think if you fucked up and you knew you fucked up and you knew they were right, not if it's like this person there's 7 billion people on Earth. It's impossible that everyone's going to like what you stand for. Totally.
This person is in that category of people who don't like what I stand for.
Yeah.
So he hates me.
Absolutely. But yeah, if it's something I've done, that's when it sucks. That's like when I'm in the shower, washing my hair and smiling and life is good. I'd think of something funny, have a laugh. And then I remember that I did something sucky. And I'm like, oh, and my whole day is ruined. I'm like, I forgot. I suck.
Not allowed to smile.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what it does.
That one thing you did. One thing you did.
You have that that feeling
forever.
Come back. You have a little laugh and then you try and still smile with your mouth, but your eyes are sad because it's true.
Man, I hate that shit because sometimes I'll think about the thought will come in from something that I did when I was 20 or something. Or
Totally.
From years ago. And it's like an automatic thing. So I almost feel like it's like putting yourself in a trance when you start playing back something that happened and where you said that stupid fucking thing that you shouldn't have, or you reacted in a way you shouldn't have. Start playing it back like it's a movie in your head.
Yeah.
You kind of trance yourself out, lose sight of your environment. You really do go into this tunnel vision thing. And I've noticed that I snap myself out of it. And I'm like, yo, stop. You're you're going down this path that's not good. Why are you thinking about this thing from 15 years ago or whatever? But because I think it's an automatic thing and you are trancing yourself out, it's very easy and natural to just play it out and get carried away. Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it? You you get carried away thinking of exactly this stupid thing you did when you were a teenager and you're like, why did I even do that? And then you start judging yourself and you're just spoiling your own day.
How different is that than being creative? Because isn't it a similar sort of thing when you come up with an idea, you lose sight of the world around you, you go with this idea, the idea grows, you start acting on it, it affects your mood, you probably get more confident, the exact opposite, right?
I wonder if creatives are more prone to doing those things, just relishing in memories because you live in that state.
Well, yeah, I think that the more creative you are or the more intelligent you are, the more RPMs your brain is operating at. And so it's going to be creating more often. It's not just going to be creating when you sit down to work. It's going to be creating when you're in the shower. It's going to be creating whenever. And so sometimes you have to treat it like it's a high-powered weapon and not let it start creating bad shit, just going wild, basically. So I
That's
do
a
think that
good point.
I do think it's comes with being creative that yeah, it's not like you can just turn it off, you know?
Yeah, well said, man. This is good. You're a good guy to talk to. I kind of wish I've
Thanks.
done this before and done it more often. I feel like
Yeah,
I'm
I'll
taking
send you.
something away.
Like I said, I'll send you the invoice later.
Nice. I'll book another session.
I do think that there's a price to be paid for being creative. Like, but that's not to say that non-creative people don't torture themselves. I just think that creative people torture themselves in more creative ways.
Yeah, that's good too, man. You're full of these. Just you're like an oracle, just spitting out these wisdom. But it's true. And I've kind of done that my whole life when I think about it. Like I think back to being 13 years old and playing acoustic guitar and singing. All I wanted to do for so long, I was not into rock music that much throughout like my teenage years, or at least the earlier teenage years. I was just really into sort of singer-songwriters. And my life's goal literally was just to move to London and be cold, wear jackets and play acoustic guitar and sing sad songs about love and heartbreak and like smoke hand-rolled cigarettes or something artsy. And I literally dwelled in that state of like pretentious sadness because it was kind of the lifestyle associated with that music. And to write songs, it's almost like that's the emotion and the state that you kind of have to dwell in.
Almost like an actor does.
Yeah, like method acting to bring that side out of you. And it's a really interesting thing, yeah, like beat yourself up to get the emotion happening so you can write about it and do what you like to do.
I wanted to talk to you about your writing, so I think there's a perfect time to go into that because I wanted to...
Nice. Good segue.
I wanted to find out more about your headspace in writing, so I want to hear more about that. So for you, in order to write, you had to put yourself in a certain sort of state of mind, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I could be one of those people that was like, I do like psychedelic
Just sit
drugs.
down and do it.
Or like I do this cool thing like eat shrooms or something and go on a wild trip, or I dream in songs. But it's nothing cool. I just have to vibe. And that's such a vague word, which is kind of annoying, but I just have to be able to get I can kind of control it too. It's not like this God-earned thing that is bestowed upon me at certain points of the day or something. Like if I just have a little bit of time to be alone, either have silence or listen to something that inspires me and just kind of drown noise out with that and think clearly, I can kind of get into... I weirdly enough, I believe that creativity is a skill, not a gift. And if you nurture it and work on it and refine it, you can become more creative. It's kind of a common thought, but still, I'm there to endorse it.
I think it's the talent part is the gift. Like,
yes,
how far you can go with it, but the actual execution of it is a skill.
Exactly. Yeah. If you wait around for when I've done that. I'm sure everyone has. You wait around for that creative thing to wash over you like a wave. And it comes like once every 3 weeks. And then before you know it, you're that dude that does like half a song over the course of 4 months and then a new idea comes and it's been 3 years and you have no songs.
Man, I used to write this article. I used to write a blog for a site called Metal Sucks. It was a long time ago. And I wrote one about this, that if you want to be a great writer, you have to write all the time. Like, you can't wait for inspiration. Because if you wait for inspiration, you're not going to write enough to get past the bad ideas. So if you only write when you're at like a peak of inspiration, it's just going to be so sporadic that, like I said, you're not going to do it enough to get good. Like, you have to do it a lot to get good.
Yeah, it's a thing that you actively work on. And I've noticed it. Like if I go a long time without writing something, I progressively get worse at writing. And not just in general. Like if I don't write a song for my band for a long time, I get worse at writing Awaken songs. Like it genuinely happens. And the same in certain genres or the same on certain instruments. I get less and less creative if I don't constantly explore and just have fun in certain areas of certain things. So again, I've gone off the point. But in terms of how I approach writing, it's very much a stock standard. I like to at least figuratively be alone. I can't really be in like a loud room of crowded people and be talking and feel creative or something. I just like to drown out noise, zone out and think. And something about music for me is really visual. Not in a cool way of like seeing sound. Like it's nothing like that.
You don't have synesthesia?
No, I wish I did. That sounds sick. Even just the title, I'd be proud just to say it.
I know some people who've got it. It's weird.
Yeah, it sounds like life would just be very hard to live normally. It'd be so weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a lot of Awaken songs turn out to be almost written like a movie script. And sometimes it's a bad thing, like because it gets into the lyrics and then the lyrics aren't sick because it's kind of just like detailing a short fictional story. Yeah, that's what most of my writing is. Like I haven't really been through that many crazy things in life. I had like the world's most average upbringing, not average as in bad, like stock standard upbringing with like a happy family. You know those people that it's all of their trauma has brought out something
Yes.
just forceful and lively and creative and groundbreaking about them. I don't have that. I'm like your most average person. And most of my writing comes from just an imagination of a story or a feeling or a vibe.
I don't think you need to have trauma to be a good creator.
Definitely not.
I don't think it necessarily hurts, but it's not a requirement.
Yes, agreed.
It's definitely it's good fuel.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. And it's,
you're not missing anything.
Yeah.
If you didn't have that, you're actually good for you for not having it.
Yeah, I'm very, very thankful for it. I used to think it was a really big issue when I was really young. Like going through school, I was like, I'm never going to be cool. Like my life's too normal. Yeah, all these people that I look up to have just either endured these crazy things or had these really, this guy was like raised by a freaking wolf or something. And I'm there with like my nice parents and loving relationship with them and going through school like a normal person. I'm not popular. I'm not like a jock, but I'm not bullied. I'm just existing. And I was definitely that guy. And I was like, this is too plain. Like this is never going to turn into anything. And that always stopped me from writing for a long time. But it's kind of just made me write stories, which is fine. For some reason, I always thought that was an issue growing up. I was trying to be like this purist that was like, it needs to come from an honest place. And it still can.
It is coming from an honest place.
It still can. It's just an honest story of something I'm seeing in my head. And that goes for music too. Like it sounds kind of corny, but I do believe that music is a bit of a visual thing. Like it's a journey and a story and you can start and follow along and then reach a final point. And I think that's apparent in my songwriting as well, where there's a very sure beginning, middle, and end sort of thing without even lyrical content. And I think that's an important thing. But yeah, to come right back to the question, to tackle a writing process, that is the first and foremost thing. Well, number one, it's something I need to just get by. I don't know what it is. I feel a bit insane if I don't write for a long time. I find myself, if I'm doing strictly engineering jobs for a while, I find myself here late at night writing songs just for the fun of it. So it's definitely something I use just for myself to stay sane and happy. But in terms of the process, it is all about just being able to place myself mentally somewhere else and, wherever that may be or whatever that may be, write about it, if that makes sense.
How does that translate into the musical side of it? I understand how that translates to the lyrical side, but...
Well, I kind of... Have you heard my band's latest song that came out called Roses? Is that the one you listened to by any chance?
Mm-hmm.
When I wrote that was a strictly visual thing. Like it is so much something I can see playing out in my head, not how the film clip is. Like it's almost like a little short movie. And it's almost like if you were to score a film, I find it hard to word this, but you'd sort of have emotions to play off and things to get somewhere. And then there's something climatic. So there is a big impactful spot. And to me, that's that. It's basically just a bunch of, play on the emotion of like happiness and sadness with major or minor sort of things. And that song is obviously really dark in the intro. And then there's a sort of rise in tension as the rhythm section sort of builds up in the verse. And then coming up to that pre-chorus, there is sort of a build up and release and something snaps. And it's quiet and calm for a second. And it's almost like in the quiet and calm, someone's tied a little bit of a noose around your neck. And when the chorus hits, they pull it and you're like, you get this ultimate whiplash and it's into a crazy chorus and then kind of rinse and repeat. And same with most songs I write. It's something like that. I kind of just went on a tangent and have never thought about that, but that's how I see it in my head.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. Where does music theory come into play? Because you did mention major and minor for certain moods.
I was very into music theory through school. and it's not something I've really nurtured since, which kind of makes me sad because I don't really believe that it's like, those people that say like music theory is limiting because it's like, oh,
yes.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to be stuck in music correctness.
I think that's so stupid.
Oh, it's so dumb. Imagine like driving a car and not knowing how to change gears and being like, I don't want to be restricted to those gears. Like, I just want to drive in one gear the whole time. That's stupid. Yeah, there's a lot of things that have helped me. A big one that I'm loving lately is just that age-old relative major thing, which we really milked in the Slaves record a couple of times, I think, and it was so sick. Where you go to that strange, unexpected minor thing and it's a whole shift in emotion throughout the song. We did that in, I believe it was the Bury a Lie bridge, and that's one that I know resonated with people that, most people that commented on it were like, damn, that bridge, man. And Matt, the singer, lets out a scream, which is like, they're a pretty band, so screaming is like outlandish for that music. And if the singer lets out a scream, everyone's like, oh, like he really meant that. So it's just this whole, build up of, there's the relative major shift, everything's sick, everything's, anthemic and awesome, and the singer screams and it's this big thing. Sorry, I've forgotten the question. Music theory, it doesn't play that much of a role in my writing. It's mostly...
Sounds like it's already in you, though.
Yeah, a little bit. There's just a lot of what I think sounds cool, blanket statement, but it's true, what I think sounds cool, and it's just salt and peppered with a little bit of knowledge that helps get that point across and helps aid that emotional thing that I was saying. But it's mostly, if I'm honest, it's kind of like just hacking. There's like 3 things that I really like and I just abuse them. And then people are like, damn, like he's talking about like, I don't know, triplets and the relative major and this and that. And he must know what he's talking about. It's like that guy that can play one song on piano, which is me as well. And everyone's like, he can play piano. I can play one song based off muscle memory, but I can't play piano.
So it sounds like you use theory more to just be able to name things.
Yes, yeah, not to
more like as a language thing.
Yeah, to explain to people what I've done or something. It doesn't come into my head like I know where I'm headed with this because I understand the theory behind it.
Dude, I think that that's what theory's for. Honestly, is for communication purposes. Because really, how can theory help you write?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it's more about just being able to have some sort of common language, even with yourself. But I think it's more just about helping name things and communicate. That's it.
Totally, it makes sense. Well, I know what I want to do emotionally and what I want to hear before I know how to put a term on it. So exactly, that's a really good point.
So do you subscribe to the idea? You said that you get like 3 ideas and you abuse them. I believe that most great songs really are only 2 or 3 ideas. One of the places actually that metal goes wrong is too many ideas, like riff after riff after riff after riff after riff. Yeah. You hear a song by like Muse or something like that, and there's like 3 ideas, and they just play them out in the most interesting ways possible. And the same with any good pop music or whatever.
Yeah, and that's what I'm loving about, like, I guess a good example is like Bring Me the Horizon's latest record. That, there's one, you can tell there was this one epic idea and the whole song is just shaped around this one thing. And it's so sick, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's awesome. And I think that's really, really prevalent in not only my writing, but a lot of writing that I enjoy listening to. And yeah, then you get to some worlds where complexity is just too much. I always say these guys are too talented for their own good because they're too musically impressive, so you can't follow along and just enjoy it because you're constantly just like, holy hell, this is so much.
I actually think it's harder to write something simple.
Yeah, that's simple but good. Yeah, exactly. To have an idea that's good enough to be so vulnerable in a song that you can abuse it so many times or just make the whole song about that one idea is hard. Totally.
I think that's a lot harder than writing something complex, honestly.
That's a good point.
Was something that actually like resonates with people and that's simple, to me that's the most challenging and highest form of achievement.
Yeah, totally, man. I agree. And I love I love the sellout theory. I love when people are there like, this band, like the Bring Me stuff, and they're like, this band like sold out so hard, blah, blah, blah. And I'm listening to these modern masterpieces that they have, and I'm like, this is like artistic brilliance. And then I listen to like Pray for Plagues or something from way back in the day, and I'm like, this kind of sucks. Like, this isn't that good. It's just a bunch of notes and an angry vocalist. You know, it's not even that musically impressive. It's just lots all the time. In comparison to their new stuff, which is so refined and so like creatively impressive, just because it's so bare bones and so simple, but everything is executed flawlessly.
Yeah, that's some serious craft, in my opinion.
Totally, I agree.
So at what point does arrangement come in? Do you write like stripped down simple versions and then arrange, or does it all come out like as it's going to be?
I think, well, it's very much for me section by section. I find it really hard when someone's like, shouldn't we be laying out all drums and all guitar, like all drums first and then all guitars? I find that really difficult to just process.
Well, I mean more like writing the song on an acoustic, then sitting down and doing the arrangement, or writing on a piano.
I don't do that. I don't know why. I think it's maybe because I've had access to production since I really started writing.
So you just think in completed ideas?
Yeah. The imagination when I have the idea is everything from, instruments to production to even like mix things. I hear it in my head as a final product and I'm like, okay, now I just need to work out how to get from here to there sort of thing.
Awesome. Well, Jude, I think this is a good place to end the episode. I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Awesome.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, it's genuinely an honor to come on and talk to you. Feel a little unqualified compared to who else has been on here, but it's an honor, man. It's very cool.
If you're on here, you're qualified.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, yeah.
That's the general rule.
I love it. It's the standard. But yeah, thank you so much, man. I've really enjoyed getting to talk to you.
My pleasure. Okay, then. Another URM podcast episode in the bag. Please remember to share our episodes with your friends, as well as post them to your Facebook, Instagram, or any social media you use. Please tag me at EYAL Levy URM Audio, and of course, please tag my guests as well. Till next time, happy mixing.
You've been listening to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast. To ask us questions, make suggestions, and interact, visit urm.academy and press the podcast link today.